There is a city in Southeast Asia that sits beside a wide, slow-moving river, where golden spires catch the light of the morning sun, and the air carries the faint scent of jasmine offerings left at spirit houses on street corners. A city that hums with the energy of millions of lives, yet somehow in its quieter moments, along the water, beneath the shade of ancient temples, in the stillness of early dawn, feels like a place out of time. A city that has been called many things by many people across many centuries. But perhaps the most remarkable thing of all about this city is simply what it is called. Tonight, we are going to drift together through the story of that city. There is no rush. There is nowhere you need to be. The only thing asked of you right now is to let your body sink a little deeper into wherever you are resting, to let your breathing slow just slightly, and to allow the words to wash over you like warm water, gently, softly, carrying you further and further toward rest. We are going to explore Bangkok, or rather, we are going to explore the city that the world calls Bangkok, because, as you will soon discover, that name barely scratches the surface of what this place truly is. So let us begin. Slowly. There is all the time in the world. Somewhere in the record books of human civilization, there is an entry that stops people in their tracks the moment they read it. It is not about a towering mountain, or a vast ocean, or the age of some ancient tree standing alone in a forest. It is about a name. Specifically, it is about the longest city name in the world. A name so extraordinary in its length and its beauty that it has become, in its own quiet way, one of the most remarkable facts in all of geography. That name belongs to Bangkok, or rather, Bangkok is simply the name the rest of the world settled on for convenience. The true ceremonial name of this city, the full, official, ancient name that was bestowed upon it at its founding stretches across 168 letters. 168. If you were to write it out by hand, your pen would travel across the page in long, graceful strokes, filling line after line with syllables that roll and rise and fall like music. It is not merely a name in the way that most city names are names, brief, functional, easy to remember. It is more like a poem, prayer, a declaration of identity that was written not just to label a place on a map, but to announce to the world and to the heavens exactly what kind of place this was and what it was meant to become. Think about the names of other great cities for a moment. London, Paris, Rome, New York, Tokyo. These names are clean and compact, easy to say in a single breath. They carry weight, certainly centuries of history compressed into a handful of letters. But they do not attempt to describe. They do not reach for grandeur in their syllables. They are names in the simplest sense of the word. Bangkok's full ceremonial name does something entirely different. Tells a story, and that story, encoded in 168 letters, speaks of a city that was conceived not merely as a place for people to live and trade and go about their daily lives, but as something far more sacred, a city of divine purpose, a city touched by the gods, a city built to endure. At a calm, restful pace, simply allowing those 168 letters to exist in your awareness, not rushing to understand them, not straining to memorize them, simply letting them settle around you like the last light of evening. There is something almost meditative about the sheer scale of that name. It invites you to slow down. It insists on being taken in gradually, one syllable at a time. And in that way, perhaps it is already teaching you something about the city it belongs to. The people of Thailand, the people who have lived in this city for generations, who were born on its streets and along its riverbanks, who have breathed its humid air and navigated its canals and watched the sun rise over its temples every morning of their lives. They do not call their city Bangkok. They never have, really. That name was used primarily by foreigners, by traders and travelers arriving from distant lands who found the full ceremonial name impossible to hold in their mouths and settled instead for a shorter, simpler version. Bangkok stuck. It spread across the world on maps and in guidebooks and in the conversations of travelers returning home with stories of a magnificent city in the east. And so Bangkok it became for most of the world. But at home, the city has always had a different name. A name that its own people love and use with quiet pride. That name is Krung Thep. Krung Thep. Say it slowly if you like, letting the syllables rest gently against each other. Krung Thep. It is softer than Bangkok somehow, more intimate. Two words where the other name crams its entire history into one. And what does Krung Thep mean? It means simply and beautifully City of Angels. There is something quietly extraordinary about that. The City of Angels. A name that conjures images of light and elevation, of something that exists between the earthly and the divine. And when you stand beside the Chao Phraya River in the early morning, when the mist is still rising off the water and the first golden light of dawn is catching the tips of the temple spires, making them glow like embers against a pale sky, it is genuinely not difficult to understand why someone, centuries ago, looked at this place and reached for the word angels to describe it. Krung Thep is the name that mothers use when they tell their children where they are from. It is the name in Thai songs and Thai poetry, the name on Thai road signs and in Thai conversation. It is the name that carries emotional weight, that carries love. Bangkok is what the world calls this city. Krung Thep is what the city calls itself. And there is something worth sitting with there, in that gentle hour before sleep. How many things in our lives carry two names? The name the world gives them, and the name they hold for themselves. The name we are known by in the world, and the name that lives deeper, more truly, in the quiet of who we actually are. Bangkok and Krung Thep, the city the world sees, and the city that knows itself. Now, let us spend a little time with the full name. Not to memorize it. There is no test tonight, no expectation, no need to hold on to anything at all. Simply to hear it, to let it pass over you like a long, slow wave. The full ceremonial name of the city begins like this. Krung Thep Mahanakan Amon Ratanakasan Mahinthra Euthea Mahadalak Fop Nafrat Ratchathani Burum Udam Rachniwat Mahasathan Amon Phiman Awitan Sathit Sakathadia Witsanakam Prazit. 168 letters. Each one placed there deliberately by people who understood that a name is not just a label, it is a gift. A name given to a city is a statement of hope, of intention, of belief in what that city might become. And when you let the sounds of that name move through your awareness, not gripping them, not analyzing them, just letting them flow, there is a rhythm to them, an undulating, almost musical quality. The long vowels stretch and linger. The consonants are soft. It is a name that was clearly meant to be spoken aloud, in a slow and reverent voice, in a ceremonial context, not rushed, not abbreviated, but given its full and proper time. In Thailand, during certain official ceremonies, this full name is still recited in its entirety. Imagine that. Imagine the hush that must fall over a room when someone begins to speak those words, one after another, unhurrying, deliberate. A long ribbon of language unspooling into the air, carrying with it all the weight of history and devotion that the name contains. There would be something almost trance-like about it, something that draws the breath slower and the attention deeper. something that reminds everyone present that they are part of something ancient and beautiful and far larger than themselves. Perhaps, as you lie there now, you can let yourself imagine that for just a moment. The soft flicker of candlelight, the smell of incense, and that long, extraordinary name filling the room like a kind of music. The translation of the full name is worth lingering over too, because it is not simply a string of sounds without meaning. Every section of that name was chosen to convey something specific, and together, those meanings build a picture that is breathtaking in its ambition and its beauty. The full name translates, roughly, to something like this: the City of Angels, the Great City, the residence of the Emerald Buddha, the impregnable city of God Indra, the grand capital of the world endowed with 9 precious gems, the happy city, abounding in an enormous royal palace that resembles the heavenly abode where reigns the reincarnated God, a city given by Indra and built by Vishnukam. Sit with that translation for a moment. Let it unfold. A city of angels. A city described as the residence of the Emerald Buddha, one of the most sacred objects in all of Thai culture. A figure carved from a single piece of green jasper that has been revered for centuries as the protector of the Thai nation. An impregnable city. A city built to endure, to stand against whatever storms history might bring. A city endowed with 9 precious gems. A phrase that speaks of abundance, of richness, not just in material terms but in spirit and in culture. A city that resembles a heavenly abode. A city that was, in the imagination of its founders, not merely a place on earth but a reflection of paradise itself. This is what names can do. When they are given with care and with love and with great faith in what the future might hold. They reach beyond the present moment. They plant a seed of vision in the earth of a place and say, "This is what we dream for you. This is what we believe you can become." And Bangkok Krung Thep has, in its own complex and human and imperfect way, spent the centuries since its founding trying to live up to that extraordinary name. The year is 1782, not so very long ago in the great span of history, a little over 200 years within the reach almost of living memory if you were to stretch a chain of grandparents and great-grandparents back far enough through the generations. In 1782, a new king came to power in the land that would eventually be called Thailand. His name was King Rama I, and he was the founder of the Chakri dynasty, a royal lineage that continues to this day, one of the longest reigning royal families in the world. King Rama I was a man of enormous vision and enormous will. He had seen his country survive terrible upheaval, the destruction of the previous capital, Ayutthaya, at the hands of invaders, and he was determined to build something new, something lasting, something worthy of the people and the culture and the faith that had endured through all of that. He chose a site beside the Chao Phraya River, a place on the eastern bank where the river curved, creating a natural moat on one side and offering broad, navigable water on another, a site that was strategically very nearly perfect. A place that could be defended, a place that could be reached by water from the sea, allowing trade and communication with the wider world. A place that had, in the minds of those who chose it, a kind of sacred geography, a rightness, a sense that this was where the new city was meant to stand. And there, in 1782, Bangkok was born. 243 years ago. Think of everything that has happened in those 243 years. Think of how the world has changed, the empires that have risen and fallen, the technologies that have transformed human life beyond recognition, the ideas that have swept across civilizations and remade them from the inside out. Through all of it, this city has stood beside its river, growing and changing and absorbing and enduring, carrying its extraordinary name and its vision of itself as a city of angels forward through every decade, every generation, every turn of history. King Rama I chose well. The city he founded in 1782 has grown into one of the great cities of the world, and the Chakri dynasty he established still reigns, a living thread connecting that founding moment to the present day, unbroken across more than 2 centuries. The Chakri dynasty. It is worth letting that name rest in your mind for a moment as you settle deeper into your rest. A dynasty that has guided a nation through the full drama of the modern era, through colonialism and independence, through wars and treaties, through the breathtaking transformations of the 20th century. Thailand, uniquely among the nations of Southeast Asia, was never colonized by a European power. It remained independent, a fact that Thai people point to with understandable and deep pride, and a fact that is inseparable from the skill and the diplomacy of the kings who guided the country through those precarious decades when the empires of Europe were carving up the rest of the continent around them. The Chakri kings were, in many ways, remarkable figures. They modernized their country while preserving its traditions. They opened their doors to the world while protecting what was most essentially Thai. They walked a narrow and difficult path, and they walked it with a remarkable degree of success. And it all began with King Rama I in 1782, on the bank of the Chao Phraya River, with a vision of a city that would be worthy of the name City of Angels. The dynasty he founded still continues. Bangkok, the city he built, still stands. And the name he gave it, all 168 letters of it, is still officially the longest city name in the world. Now let your mind drift for a moment to the shape of the city itself. Bangkok covers approximately 1,568 square kilometers. That is a significant piece of the Earth's surface. A sprawling, living, breathing organism of streets and waterways and neighborhoods and parks and temples and markets and apartment towers and ancient wooden houses and everything in between. To walk across Bangkok in a straight line from one edge to the other would take you the better part of a full day at a steady pace. But of course, no one experiences Bangkok in a straight line. The city does not work that way. It is a place of layers and folds, of unexpected turnings and sudden transitions, where a busy highway can give way, in the space of a single alley, to a quiet courtyard of flowers and spirit houses and the sound of monks chanting in the distance, where a gleaming glass skyscraper stands beside a 100-year-old temple, and neither seems diminished by the other's presence, where the ancient and the utterly modern have negotiated a kind of peaceful coexistence that you do not always find in cities that have grown so large and so fast. 1,568 square kilometers. Held within that space are thousands of years of human life. Every story, every struggle, every moment of beauty and grief and joy and ordinary Tuesday afternoon that has ever unfolded in this place. All of it accumulated, layer upon layer, like the sediment of a river building up over centuries, until the city has become something so rich and so complex that no single visitor, no single lifetime, could ever fully know it. And within those 1,568 square kilometers live more than 11 million people. 11 million human lives, each one its own complete universe of experience and memory and longing and love. 11 million people waking up each morning to the sounds and smells and rhythms of this city. 11 million people who know its streets and its moods, who have their favorite noodle stall and their favorite stretch of the river, who know which temple to visit when they need comfort and which market to go to on a Sunday morning. 11 million stories, unfolding simultaneously, in the heat and the haze and the color of one of the world's great cities. Bangkok is the most populous city in Thailand by a very wide margin. It contains something like 1/5 of the entire population of the country within its boundaries. It is the economic heart of the nation, the cultural center, the place where young people come from every province and every village to seek their futures. It is a city that has been drawing people to it for centuries, with the same magnetic pull that great cities have always exerted on human beings. The promise of possibility, of connection, of a life larger and more varied than what could be found elsewhere. 11 million people. As you lie quietly now, perhaps you can hold that number gently in your imagination, not as an abstraction, but as a living thing. 11 million heartbeats. 11 million pairs of eyes that will open tomorrow morning to the Bangkok dawn. 11 million human beings, each one asleep right now perhaps, just as you are drifting towards sleep, dreaming their own dreams in the city of angels. Long before Bangkok was a city of skyscrapers and highways and one of the busiest international airports in the world, it was a city of water. The name Venice of the East was not given lightly, and it was not given without good reason. Bangkok earned that name through something genuinely remarkable: an extensive, intricate, beautifully engineered network of canals that once threaded through the entire city like the veins of a living body. These canals are called klongs in Thai, and in the early centuries of the city's existence, they were not merely a feature of Bangkok. They were Bangkok. They were how the city moved, how it fed itself, how it traded, how it breathed. Imagine a city where the primary roads are made of water, where instead of stepping out your front door onto a pavement and hailing a taxi, you step out onto a dock and hail a long, narrow wooden boat that will carry you through a cool, shaded network of waterways, past floating markets and riverside houses and overhanging trees that trail their fingers in the current, all the way to wherever you need to go. That was Bangkok for much of its history. A city lived primarily on and beside and through water. The klongs were built with great care and deliberate purpose. They served as transportation routes, certainly, but they also managed the seasonal flooding that was simply a fact of life in this low-lying delta region, where the land sits only barely above sea level and the rains of the monsoon season can be overwhelming in their intensity. The canals absorbed that water, channeled it, gave it somewhere to go. They were, in their way, a masterpiece of civic engineering, a system so well designed that it functioned effectively for centuries before the pressures of a modern, motorized city began to push roads and highways into the spaces the water had once occupied. Many of the klongs have been filled in over the decades as Bangkok has modernized. The city of water gradually became, in many of its neighborhoods, a city of traffic and concrete and the constant roar of engines. But not entirely, not completely. A significant number of the old canals remain, narrower now perhaps, less central to the life of the city than they once were, but still there, still carrying water, still carrying boats, still carrying something of the old rhythm and the old beauty of the city that earned itself the name Venice of the East. And if you take a boat along one of the remaining klongs in Bangkok today, in the early morning especially, when the light is soft and the heat has not yet gathered its full weight, you can still feel it. That older, quieter, waterborne version of the city, still present beneath the surface of everything that has grown up around and above it, still alive. And all of those canals, all of that water, all of that life lived on and beside the river, it all flows toward and from and along one great waterway, the Chao Phraya River. The Chao Phraya, The name means, in Thai, the Great River, or sometimes translated as the River of Kings. Both names are fitting. Both names feel true. It is great in the simple physical sense, wide and brown and powerful, carrying the waters of the north down through the heart of the country to the Gulf of Thailand, moving with the unhurried authority of a river that has been flowing through this landscape for longer than any human being can fully imagine. And it is a river of kings in the historical sense. The Chukri kings built their palaces on its banks. The Grand Palace looks out over its waters. The most sacred temples of the city stand beside it. And for centuries the river was the avenue along which power and ceremony and the whole formal life of the Thai state flowed. But the Chao Phraya is more than a backdrop to history. It is, as the people of Bangkok have always known, something more alive and more essential than that. It is the lifeblood of the city, a phrase used so often about rivers that it can start to feel like a cliché. But here it is simply and directly true. The Chao Phraya has fed this city. It has moved the goods and the people that kept the city alive. It has regulated the climate in its immediate vicinity, offering relief from the intense tropical heat. It has provided the water that the agriculture of the surrounding region depends on. It has been the artery through which the life of Bangkok has pulsed for more than 240 years. Sit with the image of the Chao Phraya for a moment as you rest. A wide, dark, endlessly moving river, reflecting the lights of the city on its surface at night. Golden and red and white, fractured and shimmering with every small movement of the water. Long-tailed boats cutting across it, leaving brief white lines of foam that close again almost immediately, as if the river were gently erasing the evidence of each passing. The occasional large vessel moving slowly downstream toward the sea. And on both banks, the city, ancient and modern, sacred and ordinary, arranged along the water's edge as it has been for centuries, facing the river as though in quiet conversation with it. The Chao Phraya does not hurry. It has all the time in the world. It has been flowing long before any of us arrived, and it will continue flowing long after. There is something deeply restful about that, if you allow yourself to feel it. Something that puts the ordinary anxieties of a human life into a gentle and merciful perspective. The river does not worry. The river does not rush. The river simply moves, endlessly and without effort, toward the sea. And so we have drifted together through the beginnings of Bangkok's story tonight. Through its extraordinary name, all 168 letters of it, and what those letters contain. Through the name the city calls itself, Krung Thep, the City of Angels, a name given with love and with faith in what this place was meant to become. Through the translation of that full ceremonial name, which speaks of jewels and palaces and divine cities and the residence of the sacred and the beautiful. Through the founding of the city in 1782, by a king of great vision, on a bend of a great river. Through the dynasty he began, which still continues to this day. Through the sheer scale of the city, 1,568 square kilometers, 11 million lives, one of the great human settlements of the modern world. Through its past as a city of water, a Venice of the East, a place where canals were roads and boats were taxis and the whole of daily life was arranged around the movement of water. And through the great river at the heart of it all, the Chao Phraya, the river of kings, the lifeblood of everything. This is Bangkok, Krung Thep, the city of angels. And we have only just begun. There will be more to discover, much more slowly and gently in good time. But for now, There is nothing more required of you than to let all of this settle softly into the background of your awareness. Let the images dissolve into one another like watercolors in the rain. The golden spires, the brown river, the klongs in the early morning light, the long and extraordinary name, the sound of monks chanting somewhere beyond a courtyard wall. Let them become less vivid, less distinct, and more like the feeling of a place than the facts of a place. Less something to know and more something to dream. You are in the city of angels now, in the only way that matters tonight. Quietly, safely, drifting, let yourself go deeper. The river is moving, the city is breathing, and everything is well. Segment 2: Culture and Temples. There are cities in the world that you experience primarily through your eyes. Cities of grand boulevards and impressive facades. Cities where the architecture speaks loudly and the history is written in stone for anyone passing by to read. And then there are cities that you experience in a different way. Cities that ask something of you before they open themselves up. Cities where the deepest and most beautiful things are not immediately visible to the casual glance, but reveal themselves slowly to those who are willing to slow down, to pay attention, to approach with a certain quality of respect and quiet curiosity. Bangkok is very much the second kind of city. It is a city with an interior life, a spiritual life, that runs as deep and as wide as the Chao Phraya River itself. A city where faith is not something confined to 1 hour on a particular morning of the week, but something woven into the texture of every single day, into the first light of morning and the last light of evening, into the food left at a small shrine on a street corner, into the orange robes of a monk walking barefoot along a canal path, into the sound of temple bells carried on the warm air of an afternoon, into the gestures of daily life, the way people greet each other, the way they enter a sacred space, the way they treat the earth beneath their feet and the sky above their heads and the people they encounter along the way. Tonight, we are going to drift together through this interior life, through the temples and the sacred images and the ancient customs and the quiet rituals that form the spiritual heart of Bangkok. There is no hurry. There is no need to hold on tightly to any of it. Simply let the images and the stories float past you, like lotus blossoms on the surface of a still canal, as you move gently and gradually towards sleep. More than 400 Buddhist temples stand within the boundaries of Bangkok. 400, let that number settle for a moment. In a city of 1,568 square kilometers, more than 400 places of worship, of meditation, of sacred architecture and sacred image and sacred sound. That works out roughly to a temple for every 4 square kilometers of the city, which means that wherever you are in Bangkok, you are never very far from a place where someone has, at some point, sat down in the presence of the divine and been still. These temples are called What's in Thai, a word that is simple and short and familiar to anyone who has spent even a little time in Thailand, but which carries within it an enormous weight of meaning and history and devotion. A what is not simply a building. It is a complex, a collection of structures that might include the main worship hall, monks' quarters, meditation pavilions, bell towers, ceremonial gates, gardens, courtyards, and the tall, pointed towers called prangs or quietest that rise above the rooftops of Bangkok's neighborhoods like golden fingers pointing at the sky. To walk through Bangkok streets is to move in and out of the presence of these places constantly. You turn a corner and suddenly a temple gate is before you, an elaborate, ornate entrance flanked by mythological guardian figures, their eyes wide and their expressions fierce, standing watch over the threshold between the ordinary world and the sacred one. You walk a little further, and through a gap between buildings you catch a glimpse of a chedi, gleaming white or gold in the sunlight, rising above everything around it with a kind of serene indifference to the traffic and the noise at its base. You pause on a bridge over a clong and hear, just faintly, the sound of chanting, low and rhythmic and ancient, drifting out through the open doors of a temple across the water. 400 temples, 400 points of stillness distributed throughout the energy and the noise and the color of one of Asia's most vibrant cities. As if the city itself understood, from its very founding, that human beings need places of quiet. Need places where the ordinary world is gently set aside and something larger, something more enduring, can be felt. Of all those 400 temples, there is one that stands apart. One that occupies a place in the hearts of Thai people that no other temple can match. One whose name is known around the world, and whose meaning within Thailand goes far deeper than any tourist description can adequately capture. That temple is Wat Phra Kaew, the Temple of the Emerald Buddha. It sits within the grounds of the Grand Palace, in the heart of old Bangkok, beside the Chao Phraya River. It was built by King Rama I himself at the very founding of the city as the spiritual heart of the new capital, the place where the most sacred object in all of Thailand would be housed and protected and venerated. And it remains, to this day, the most sacred temple in the entire country. Not simply a place of great religious significance, but something more than that. A place that carries the soul of Thailand within its walls. The architecture of Wat Phra Kaew is dazzling in a way that photographs can only partially capture. The roofs are layered and steeply pitched, their edges curving upward in the graceful Thai style, covered in ceramic tiles of deep orange and green that flash in the sunlight. The exterior walls are encrusted with mosaics of colored glass and gilded ornament, so that the whole building seems to shimmer and shift as the light changes throughout the day. Mythological figures stand guard at every entrance. Yaksha demons in elaborate armor, their faces painted red and green and gold, their expressions ferocious, their purpose protective. Inside, the walls are painted with scenes from the Ramayana, the Thai version of the ancient Hindu epic the Ramayana, an endless, richly detailed mural of battles and forests and gods and heroes that stretches around the entire interior of the cloister. But for all of that extraordinary beauty, what draws people to Wat Phra Kaew, what has drawn Thai people to this place for more than 2 centuries with an intensity of devotion that never diminishes, is not the architecture, magnificent as it is. It is what the temple was built to house: the Emerald Buddha. The Emerald Buddha sits at the far end of the main hall of Wat Phra Kaew, elevated on a tall golden throne so high above the floor that visitors who come to pay their respects must tilt their heads upward to see it. And when they do, what they see is, in one sense, surprisingly small. The figure is only about 66 centimeters tall, barely larger than a child. In another sense, it is one of the most visually commanding presences you will ever encounter in a sacred space, because everything around it, the soaring golden throne, the elaborate canopy, the deep shadows of the hall, the faint smell of incense, the hush that falls over every person who enters, all of it conspires to give the small figure an aura of immense, concentrated power. And despite its name, the Emerald Buddha, the figure is not made of emerald. It is carved from a single piece of green jade, or possibly green jasper. Scholars have debated the precise stone for many years, though most now lean toward jasper. The deep, rich green of the stone has a quality of depth to it, a sense that the color goes on forever inside the material, which perhaps explains why someone centuries ago reached for the word emerald to describe it. Emerald is the word for a green that seems to contain light within itself, rather than merely reflecting it. And the Emerald Buddha, in the dimness of its temple hall, does seem to contain something within itself, some quality of stillness and presence that is difficult to explain in purely material terms. The history of the Emerald Buddha before its arrival in Bangkok is long and complicated and full of the kind of drama that legends are made of. It passed through multiple kingdoms over many centuries, was hidden and rediscovered and fought over and carried from city to city, until it finally came to rest in Wat Phra Kaew in 1784, 2 years after the founding of Bangkok. And there it has remained, an anchor, a point of absolute stillness at the heart of a city that never stops moving. 3 times a year, something happens in Wat Phra Kaew that speaks, more perhaps than anything else, to the depth of the living relationship between Thailand's sacred traditions and its royal family. The Emerald Buddha does not wear the same golden robe throughout the year. It has 3 sets of robes, one for each of the 3 seasons that the Thai calendar recognizes: the hot season, the rainy season, and the cool season. And at the turning of each season, the robes are changed. This is not performed by a temple official or a senior monk or any ordinary human being. The robes of the Emerald Buddha are changed by the King of Thailand himself. 3 times a year, the king, the head of state, the holder of one of the oldest continuing royal offices in the world, climbs the ladder to the high throne on which the Emerald Buddha sits, and with his own hands carefully, reverently, removes the robes of the passing season and dresses the figure in the robes of the season to come. It is an act of personal devotion as much as it is a royal ceremony. A statement that the connection between the Thai monarchy and the spiritual life of the Thai people is not merely symbolic or ceremonial, but real and personal and lived. Imagine being present for that moment. The vast, hushed hall, the light filtering through the high windows, the smell of jasmine garlands and incense, the king ascending the golden steps, alone with the sacred figure that has been the spiritual guardian of this nation for more than 2 centuries, the silence of 1,000 devotees below, and the quiet, careful, deeply human gesture of hands adjusting a robe, of one person tending to another with love and care, even if that other is a figure of jade and gold who has been sitting in perfect stillness for 240 years. There is something in that image that is almost unbearably moving, if you let yourself feel it. The continuity of it, the devotion of it, the insistence that some things are too important to be delegated, too sacred to be handed off, too central to who you are and what you represent to be performed by anyone other than yourself. Across the river from the old city, visible from the water at almost any point along the central stretch of the Chao Phraya, there rises a tower unlike any other in Bangkok. Its silhouette is distinctive, a tall central prang, steeply tapering, surrounded by smaller towers at its base, the whole structure rising in a series of terraced levels from the riverside to a point high above the city. In the golden light of early morning, when the sun is just coming up over the eastern horizon and its first rays catch the surface of this tower, the whole structure seems to ignite, to burn with a warm, diffused light that has given it its name. This is Wat Arun, the Temple of Dawn, and the reason it catches the morning light so beautifully, the reason it seems to almost glow from within when the sun first touches it, is something that you might not guess just from looking at photographs. Because the surface of Wat Arun is not covered in gold, as so many Bangkok temples are. It is not covered in smooth white plaster or carved stone. It is covered in broken porcelain. Millions of pieces of broken porcelain, fragments of old Chinese porcelain plates and bowls and decorative objects, pressed into mortar in intricate patterns that cover every surface of the temple's towers from base to tip. The pieces are tiny, some no larger than a thumbnail, and they are arranged in patterns of extraordinary complexity and beauty, creating flowers and leaves and geometric forms that shift and shimmer as the light moves across them throughout the day. In the morning, that light is warm and golden, and the temple glows. At midday, it is sharp and bright, and the temple sparkles. In the evening, it takes on a softer, more contemplative quality, and the temple seems to settle into itself, as if breathing out slowly after a long day. The use of broken porcelain on Waterun is thought to have begun in the early 19th century, when large quantities of Chinese porcelain arrived in Bangkok as ballast in trading ships. The porcelain was surplus, broken, of no commercial value, and yet someone looked at those fragments and saw not waste but possibility, saw that broken things could be rearranged into something new and beautiful and enduring, saw that the pieces of something that had been destroyed could become the surface of something sacred. There is a kind of quiet wisdom in that, if you allow yourself to sit with it for a moment. The idea that what is broken is not necessarily without value, that fragments can form patterns, that even the pieces of things that have ended can become part of something that lasts. If Waterun is the temple of the sky, tall and tapering, reaching upward, its surface catching the light of the sun and the moon and the stars, then Wat Pho, on the opposite bank of the river, is the temple of the earth. The temple of the vast and the horizontal. The temple of a figure so large that it seems to occupy not just space but time, lying there with a serenity so complete and so ancient that it makes the whole of ordinary human hurry seem, in its presence, rather small and rather temporary. Wat Pho is home to the reclining Buddha. The reclining Buddha of Wat Pho is 46 meters long. 46 meters, the length of a large passenger aircraft, covered entirely in gold leaf. Tens of thousands of individual squares of impossibly thin beaten gold, applied by hand, one by one, over every centimeter of the figure's surface. The figure lies on its side in the posture of parinirvana, the posture of the Buddha at the moment of his final passing from the cycle of death and rebirth into nirvana, the state of perfect peace. The eyes are open, and they have a quality that is difficult to describe. Peaceful and aware simultaneously, present and yet utterly untroubled, looking out at the world with an expression of perfect equanimity. The feet of the reclining Buddha are perhaps its most extraordinary feature. They are 3 meters tall and 5 meters wide, and the soles are divided into 108 panels, each one inlaid with mother-of-pearl in intricate designs that depict the 108 auspicious characteristics of the true Buddha. 108, a number of deep significance in Buddhist cosmology, appearing again and again in the sacred mathematics of the tradition. There are 108 bronze bowls arranged along the wall beside the figure, and visitors can purchase small coins and drop them one by one into each bowl as they walk past. A practice that is said to bring good luck, and which creates a soft, continuous sound of metal on metal, like a kind of gentle music, throughout the hall. To lie on a cool floor beside the reclining Buddha of Wat Pho, if such a thing were possible, and simply look up at the great golden figure above you, would be, I imagine, one of the more extraordinary experiences available to a human being in this world. The sheer scale of it, the weight of the gold, the sense of something vast and calm and entirely at peace with the nature of existence, hovering above you in the warm, incense-scented air. But Wat Pho is remarkable for another reason entirely. one that has nothing to do with its magnificent central image and everything to do with the history of the human body and the art of healing. Wat Pho is considered the birthplace of traditional Thai massage. Long before there were massage schools and wellness centers and spa retreats, there was this temple. The practice of traditional Thai massage, a sophisticated and ancient system of bodywork that combines elements of yoga, acupressure, and energy work into something entirely its own, was developed and codified here, within the walls of Wat Pho, and passed down from teacher to student across generations. The temple functioned in earlier centuries as a kind of university, a place of learning not just in the religious and philosophical sense, but in the practical sense too. Medicine, astronomy, literature, the arts, all of these were studied and taught within the temple walls. The stone inscriptions and diagrams at Wat Pho, carved into the temple walls during the reign of King Rama III in the early 19th century, are among the earliest surviving texts on traditional Thai medicine. They depict the sen lines, the invisible energy pathways that run through the human body according to Thai medical tradition, and the points along those lines where pressure can be applied to relieve pain and restore the flow of vital energy. They are, in a sense, the textbooks from which the entire tradition of traditional Thai massage has been taught ever since. Today, Wat Pho houses one of the most respected traditional massage schools in all of Thailand. Students come from across the country to learn the techniques that were developed and preserved here over centuries. The tradition that began in this temple has spread around the world, practiced now in clinics and spas and studios on every continent, carrying with it something of the ancient knowledge and the careful devotion that was encoded in those stone inscriptions on a temple wall more than 200 years ago. Not far away, in the Chinatown district of Bangkok, there stands another temple with another remarkable treasure at its heart. This temple is Wat Tramit, and the treasure it contains is, in purely material terms, one of the most valuable objects in any temple anywhere in the world. It is a statue of the Buddha, 5.5 tons of solid gold. 5.5 tons. The weight of several large automobiles, compressed into a single-seated figure approximately 3 meters tall. Every gram of that figure is pure gold, not gilded, not gold-plated, not gold leaf applied over a base of some other material, but solid gold, cast and formed and shaped by craftspeople of extraordinary skill into the graceful, serene, meditating figure that now sits at the center of Wat Tramit, glowing with a warmth and a richness that gold has always had in the presence of light. The golden Buddha of Wat Tramit is believed to have been created during the Sukhothai period, somewhere between the 13th and 15th centuries, making it not just extraordinarily valuable, but extraordinarily ancient. A golden figure that has sat in meditation for somewhere between 500 and 700 years. But the most astonishing thing about this statue is not its age, or even its material. It is the story of how it survived. For centuries, no one knew the golden Buddha was gold. For centuries, this 5.5-ton treasure sat in a temple, venerated by worshippers who believed it was simply a large plaster statue, unremarkable in material terms, sacred in religious ones, but not particularly unusual among the many large Buddha statues that can be found throughout Thailand. Generation after generation of monks and pilgrims and devotees sat before it, prayed before it, made their offerings before it, without anyone suspecting what lay beneath the surface. The gold had been hidden, deliberately, carefully, probably desperately, at some point in the distant past, most likely during a period of intense military threat, when armies from neighboring kingdoms were moving through the region and looting whatever they could find of value. Someone had made the decision to hide the golden Buddha in plain sight. The entire surface of the statue had been covered in thick plaster, transforming it from an unmistakable treasure into an apparently ordinary religious image. an image that no invading army would bother to carry away, because it appeared to be made of nothing more valuable than clay. The disguise worked. The invaders came and they passed. The plaster Buddha sat unnoticed and undisturbed. And then time passed. Decades became centuries. The people who had applied the plaster, the ones who knew the secret it concealed, were long gone. The knowledge of what lay beneath was lost, carried away by the deaths of those who had held it, until only the plaster statue remained, sitting in its temple, its secret intact. Until one day in 1955, when the statue was being moved to a new location and the plaster cracked. And through the crack, someone glimpsed gold. Think about that moment. The slow realization of what had been sitting there all along. The gold that had been present and hidden and waiting, patient and silent beneath its disguise, through all of those centuries of uncertainty and change and ordinary human life flowing past it. The treasure that had survived precisely because no one had known it was a treasure. Beneath all of our surfaces, what secrets of gold are waiting, quiet and patient, to be found? Wherever you walk in Bangkok, down any street, through any neighborhood, past any building from the grandest hotel to the most modest shophouse, you will notice something. Set apart from the foot traffic, usually raised on a small platform or pedestal, ornately crafted, garlanded with fresh flowers and incense sticks, sending thin threads of fragrant smoke into the warm air, you will notice a small house. Not a house for human beings, a house for spirits. These are spirit houses, and they are one of the most immediately visible expressions of a belief system that runs beneath the surface of Thai culture like the klongs run beneath the surface of the city. Always present, always moving, shaping the life above them in ways that are sometimes obvious and sometimes subtle but never entirely absent. The belief is this: every place, every piece of land, every building, every space where human beings live and work and gather has a guardian spirit, a presence, invisible but real, that inhabits and watches over that place. And because these spirits are real, and because they have been displaced or at least inconvenienced by the human construction that has been built in their territory, it is only right and proper and respectful to provide them with a comfortable home of their own, and to tend to that home with care, and to leave offerings, flowers, incense, fruit, small figurines, cups of water or rice, to thank the spirit for its protective presence and to keep it content. A discontented spirit in this belief system is a problem. A household where the spirit house has been neglected, where the flowers have wilted and no new ones have been offered, where the incense has long since burned down and not been replaced. Such a household may find that things do not go well. Accidents may happen. Business may falter. Unease may settle over the family like a low cloud that will not lift. The guardian spirit, feeling unacknowledged and untended, withdraws its protection. And so the spirit houses are tended. Every day, in millions of households and businesses and institutions across Bangkok, someone steps outside in the morning to replace the flowers, to light a fresh stick of incense, to pour clean water, to offer a small token of acknowledgement to the unseen presence that watches over their home. It is a daily act of care and connection and humility, a daily reminder that human beings do not inhabit this world alone. You will find spirit houses outside hospitals and police stations, outside gleaming corporate headquarters and ancient wooden market stalls, outside the Grand Palace and outside the smallest street food cart. No place is too grand or too humble for its guardian spirit to deserve acknowledgement. No one is too important or too busy to pause for a moment each morning and tend to the tiny, flower-decked home of the unseen presence that watches over them. To enter one of Bangkok's 400 temples is to cross a threshold, not just a physical threshold, but a social and spiritual one. And like all meaningful thresholds, this one asks something of you before you cross it. It asks you to dress with respect. In a city where the heat can be staggering, where the temperature in the hot season climbs into the high 30s, where the humidity wraps itself around you like a warm, wet blanket from the moment you step outside, covering your shoulders and your knees might seem like a demanding requirement. And yet throughout Bangkok, the temples hold to this standard, and visitors who arrive underdressed are gently redirected to find a shawl or a sarong before they may enter. The requirement is not arbitrary and it is not merely traditional. It is an expression of something real, that a sacred space deserves a certain quality of attention and care, and that the way we dress our bodies is one of the most immediate and visible ways in which we communicate that quality. To cover your shoulders and your knees before entering a temple is to do something with your body before you do anything with your mind. It is a physical act of preparation, a small adjustment that says, quietly but clearly, I know where I am. I understand that this place is different from the street outside. I am choosing to honor that difference. And there is something about that gesture, that small, practical, slightly inconvenient act of covering up in the heat, that has a way of shifting your inner state as well. You adjust your clothing, and somehow your pace slows a little. Your breathing deepens. You arrive at the temple door already a little quieter inside than you were on the street. Once inside, there is another rule, one that speaks to a principle that runs very deep in Buddhist and Thai culture. Never point your feet at a Buddha image. The feet, in Thai culture, are the lowest part of the body in a spiritual and symbolic sense. They are what touches the earth, what is farthest from the heavens. And because of this, they carry a kind of symbolic weight. To direct them toward something is to aim the lowest, most earthbound part of yourself at that thing, and this is considered deeply disrespectful when the thing in question is a sacred image. When Thai people sit in a temple, they arrange their legs carefully, tucked to the side or folded, in a position that ensures the feet are pointing away from the Buddha rather than toward it. It requires a little awareness and a little care. It requires you to think, briefly but genuinely, about where your body is directed and what that direction communicates. And this principle does not end at the temple door. It extends into Thai social life more broadly. In any home, in any gathering, it is considered impolite to stretch your legs out in such a way that your feet point toward another person. The feet are kept away from others, turned inward or tucked beneath you. It is a constant, embodied practice of spatial awareness and social consideration, a way of moving through shared space that says, I am aware of you. I am aware of how my body is positioned in relation to yours. I care about the message that positioning sends. And at the other end of the body, there is an equally powerful principle that operates in the opposite direction. The head, in Thai culture, is the most sacred part of a person. It is the highest point of the body, the place closest to the heavens, the seat of the spirit. And because of this, it is treated with corresponding reverence. You should never touch a Thai person's head without their express permission. Not a child's head, lovingly ruffled as a gesture of affection. Not an adult's head, touched in greeting or in playfulness. The head is sacrosanct. To touch it without permission, even well-meaningly, even affectionately, is to commit a serious social transgression. It is to treat the most sacred part of a person's being as if it were simply hair and bone, available to be handled by anyone who happens to feel like it. This principle can come as a surprise to visitors from cultures where ruffling a child's hair is considered a perfectly friendly and warm gesture. But understanding it opens up something important about the Thai worldview, about the seriousness with which the body is understood as a spiritual entity, not just a biological one. About the dignity that is extended to every person as a matter of course, regardless of their age or their station. About the care and the attention that Thai culture brings to the question of how we treat each other in the most basic and physical sense. The feet are low. The head is high. The feet point away from the sacred. The head is protected and honored. The body is a map of the spirit, and every gesture of the body carries meaning. Near the ancient temple of Wat Mahathat, in the old part of Bangkok, there is a market that is unlike most of the markets in a city already famous for its extraordinary variety of markets. It does not sell food, or clothing, or electronics, or the tourist trinkets that fill the stalls of the more famous commercial districts. What it sells is harder to describe and more interesting. It sells protection. The amulet market near Wat Mahathat is one of the largest and most remarkable markets of its kind in the world. A dense, crowded, endlessly fascinating labyrinth of stalls and dealers devoted entirely to the buying and selling of protective charms. Buddhist amulets in their hundreds of thousands, of every possible variety and age and origin, covering every available surface of every stall. Hanging in rows, laid out in glass cases, piled in trays, arranged by type or by age or by the particular monk who consecrated them. The amulets come in many forms. Small metal discs stamped with sacred images. Tiny clay tablets impressed with Buddhist figures. Statuettes of revered monks. encased in glass and metal, objects of carved wood or bone, strung on silk cords, each one blessed, consecrated, charged with protective energy by a monk of acknowledged spiritual power, because the power of an amulet in Thai belief comes not from the material it is made of, but from the intention and the spiritual force that has been placed within it. People collect these amulets with a seriousness and a passion that rivals any serious collector of any object in the world. Certain amulets, made by particularly revered monks and of particular age and provenance, are worth extraordinary sums, not because of the value of their materials, but because of the spiritual protection they are believed to confer. They are worn around the neck, carried in pockets, kept in vehicles, placed in homes. Wherever their owner goes, they go, invisible guardians, carried close to the body, present in every moment of danger and uncertainty and ordinary daily life. The amulet market is a place where the sacred and the commercial, the ancient and the contemporary, exist in a proximity that might seem strange until you understand that in Bangkok, these things have never been entirely separate. Faith here has always been practical. The divine here has always been present in the details of daily life. And then there is a custom that might surprise the visitor who steps into one of Bangkok's many cinemas for an evening film. Before the movie begins, before the advertisements, before the trailers, before the opening credits of whatever story is about to unfold on the screen, the lights dim and something plays. Not a logo, not a jingle, not a promotional reel. The royal anthem, a solemn, beautiful piece of music, played in honor of the King of Thailand. And as it plays, everyone in the cinema stands. Every person in every seat rises to their feet, and they stand quietly and respectfully for the duration of the anthem, before sitting back down again as the ordinary business of the evening's entertainment resumes. This happens before every film in every cinema throughout Thailand. It is not optional, and it is not merely a formality that people observe with the kind of half-hearted compliance that formal customs can sometimes attract. It is observed with genuine respect, a moment in which the pleasure of a night out at the movies is briefly set aside to acknowledge something larger, something that the Thai people feel a real and living connection to: their monarchy, their nation, the continuity of the culture, and the identity that the royal family represents. For a visitor from a country where such customs have long since faded into history, it can be a striking experience. The darkened cinema, the music swelling, every person on their feet in silence. And then the music ends and everyone sits, and the popcorn rustles again, and the screen lights up with the first images of the film. A single, brief, sincere gesture of belonging, of remembering, before the entertainment begins, that you are part of something larger than yourself. That the story playing out in the cinema is nested within a much longer and more important story. The story of a people and a culture and a way of life that has been sustained and cherished across centuries. And so we have drifted tonight through the sacred interior of Bangkok, through its 400 temples, spread across the city like 400 points of stillness in the constant motion of daily life, through the most sacred of them all, Wat Phra Kaew and its extraordinary emerald Buddha, that small, deep green figure of jade or jasper that has sat on its golden throne for more than 2 centuries, dressed 3 times a year in new golden robes by the hands of the king himself, through Wat Arun, the Temple of Dawn, rising above the river in its extraordinary mosaic of broken porcelain, teaching its quiet lesson about the beauty that can be found in fragments, through Wat Pho and the vast golden figure of the reclining Buddha, lying in its 46-meter serenity, and the ancient knowledge of healing and bodywork that was born within its walls, through Wat Tramit and the 5.5 tons of gold that lay hidden beneath plaster for centuries, patient and secret, waiting to be found, through the spirit houses on every street corner, tended every morning with fresh flowers and incense, and a quiet acknowledgement of the invisible presences that share this world with us, through the dress code and the foot rules and the sacred status of the head, all of those embodied practices through which Thai culture expresses its understanding that the body is spiritual, that space is meaningful, and that the way we move through the world carries consequences. Through the amulet market and its thousands of small objects charged with protective intention. And through the royal anthem playing in a darkened cinema, and every person rising to their feet. This is the spiritual life of Bangkok, not separated from daily life, not confined to Sundays or to special occasions, but woven into the fabric of every single day, present in the incense smoke rising from a street corner spirit house, in the orange robes of a monk walking in the early morning, in the sound of a temple bell, in the careful way a person arranges their legs when they sit in a sacred place, in the weight of a small amulet resting against a chest as its owner moves through the world. And now, as all of that settles gently into the background of your awareness, let the images soften and blur. The gold of the reclining Buddha, the shimmer of broken porcelain catching the dawn light, the green depths of the emerald Buddha on its high golden throne, the fragrance of jasmine at a spirit house in the early morning. Let all of it become less distinct, more like a feeling than a memory, more like a dream than a description. You are resting in the city of angels. 400 temples are keeping their quiet watch. The river is moving in the darkness below, and everything in this moment is held. Go deeper. You are safe. You are still. And sleep is very close now. Segment 3, Food and Drink. There is a particular kind of hunger that has nothing to do with the stomach. It is the hunger that overtakes you when you turn a corner in an unfamiliar city and the air changes. When something drifting toward you on the warm breeze is so complex and so alive and so completely unlike anything you have smelled before that your whole body stops, just for a moment, and pays attention. When the ordinary business of walking and thinking and planning is briefly suspended by something more ancient and more immediate than any of that. When your senses, before your mind has had a chance to catch up, have already understood that something extraordinary is happening nearby. That hunger, that full-body, involuntary, deeply human response to the smell of good food being prepared in the open air is one of the defining experiences of Bangkok. And it begins the moment you step outside. Tonight, we are going to drift together through the food and drink of this extraordinary city. Through the street stalls and the floating markets and the drinks served in plastic bags with straws and the fruit that smells so powerfully that it has been banned from the city's public transportation. Through the dishes that have been eaten here for centuries and the ones that were invented within living memory. Through the flavors and the textures and the colors and the customs that make the food culture of Bangkok something that travelers from every corner of the world come specifically, deliberately to experience. There is no rush. The walk is not going anywhere. The night market is open until well past midnight. Settle in, let your breathing slow, and let the story of Bangkok's extraordinary table unfold around you at its own unhurried pace. Bangkok is widely considered the street food capital of the world. Not one of the great street food cities. Not a strong contender for the title. The capital. The benchmark against which all other cities that take their street food seriously are, in the end, measured. This is a title that means something, because the competition is genuinely formidable. Cities across Asia and the wider world have extraordinary street food traditions. Rich, deep, old, deeply loved. And yet Bangkok keeps finding itself at the top of the lists, in the conversations of serious food travelers, in the assessments of chefs and critics who have eaten their way around the world and returned with strong opinions about where the most extraordinary food can be found for the least money in the most atmospheric setting. Why Bangkok? What is it about this particular city that has earned it this particular distinction? Part of the answer is sheer abundance. The street food of Bangkok is not a niche offering or a tourist attraction layered over a more conventional food culture. It is the food culture. It is how a very large proportion of Bangkok's 11 million residents eat. Every single day, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and the various snacks and small meals that punctuate the hours in between. The infrastructure of street food here is not a remnant of an older way of life that is gradually being replaced by restaurants and supermarkets. It is a living, thriving, constantly evolving ecosystem that has been central to the life of this city for as long as the city has existed. Walk through any Bangkok neighborhood at almost any hour of the day or night, and you will find food being prepared and sold on the street. A woman behind a cart, her walk over a fierce gas flame, tossing ingredients with the practiced, economical movements of someone who has performed this exact sequence of actions 10,000 times and made it look, each time, effortless. A man at a makeshift grill, rows of skewers arranged over glowing charcoal, turning them with unhurried attention, knowing by the smell and the color when each one is exactly ready. A cart covered in clear plastic bags filled with fresh-cut fruit, mango and pineapple and watermelon and papaya, already peeled and sliced, ready to hand over with a small bag of chili salt for dipping. Another cart with a glass case displaying the deep-fried things, golden and crisp and glistening under a bare light bulb. And behind every cart, every grill, every makeshift kitchen, a person who has learned their particular specialty with a seriousness and a dedication that any professional chef in any starred restaurant in any city in the world would recognize and respect. Street food in Bangkok is not a lesser form of cooking. It is cooking at the highest level, performed in the most challenging conditions, for the most demanding audience. An audience that eats this food every day and knows immediately and precisely when it is not right. Which brings us to JFAI. In a city full of remarkable cooks, JFAI is a legend. A figure so respected, so genuinely extraordinary in her craft, that she has become one of the most famous street food vendors in the world. Not just in Bangkok, not just in Thailand, but globally. She works in a small, modest shop house on Mahachai Road in the old part of the city, wearing the same uniform she has worn for decades. A thick coat, ski goggles to protect her eyes from the intense heat and the flying oil of her wok, and the focused, unhurrying expression of someone who is doing exactly what they were meant to do. JFAI has been cooking for more than 40 years. She cooks over 2 charcoal fires simultaneously, managing both woks with a skill and a physical strength that is astonishing to watch. Her most famous dish is a crab omelette, a preparation of eggs and fresh crab meat that is cooked to a precise, almost impossibly perfect texture, the outside crisp and golden, the inside yielding and rich and full of the clean, sweet flavor of quality crab. It takes concentration and experience and a quality of physical attention that cannot be rushed or faked or produced on demand by someone who has not spent decades learning the exact feel of the thing. And Michelin, the organization that awards the stars that have, for over a century, served as the most recognized mark of culinary excellence in the world, gave JFAI a star. A Michelin star to a street food vendor cooking on charcoal over an open fire on a Bangkok street. Bangkok has several such Michelin-starred street food stalls. A fact that tells you everything you need to know about the seriousness with which the food world now takes the street food of this city. The queues to eat at JFAI are long. They begin early and they move slowly, because JFAI will not be hurried, and she will not compromise, and she cooks each dish herself by hand, over her 2 charcoal fires, in the way she has always cooked it. The wait, by all accounts, is worth it. Not just for the food, though the food is extraordinary, but for the experience of being in the presence of someone who has given their life to a single thing and achieved, through that devotion, something very close to perfection. There is a dish that is known around the world as the signature food of Thailand, a dish that appears on menus in Thai restaurants from London to Los Angeles, from Sydney to Stockholm, its name recognized by people who have never set foot in Southeast Asia, its combination of flavors, sweet and salty and sour and faintly smoky, the soft give of the noodles, the crunch of the bean sprouts, the richness of the egg, familiar and beloved on every continent, Pad Thai. And the story of how this dish came to be is rather different from what most people assume. Pad Thai did not emerge organically from the deep culinary traditions of the Thai people over centuries of cooking. It was not a dish passed down from grandmother to mother to daughter in the villages and the river communities of ancient Siam. It was, in a very real sense, invented, deliberately created and then actively promoted by a government that had a very specific political agenda in mind. In the 1930s, Thailand was in the middle of a significant national transformation. The country was modernizing rapidly, navigating a complicated relationship with the wider world, and the government of the time, under Prime Minister Plake Phibunsongkhram, was engaged in a project of nation-building that touched almost every aspect of Thai public life. National identity was being constructed and promoted with great intention. The name of the country itself was changed, from Siam to Thailand. New national customs and practices were being encouraged, and the government decided that Thailand needed a national dish. A single food that could be promoted as essentially and distinctively Thai, a culinary symbol of national identity, a dish that every Thai person would recognize and eat and feel connected to. Pad Thai was that dish. A recipe was developed, tested, and promoted. Street vendors were encouraged to sell it. The government actively pushed the dish as part of its nationalist campaign. A bowl of stir-fried rice noodles with egg and shrimp and bean sprouts, and the particular combination of sauces that gives it its distinctive flavor, presented as the taste of Thailand, the food of the Thai people. And the remarkable thing is that it worked. The government-invented national dish became, within a generation, genuinely beloved, eaten enthusiastically not because anyone was told to eat it, but because it turned out to be delicious. The political origins faded into the background as the dish established itself in the genuine affections of the population. And eventually, it spread around the world, carrying the name of Thailand with it, becoming the most recognizable symbol of Thai cuisine globally. A dish born of nationalism, nurtured by government policy, and elevated by the simple and irrefutable fact that it tastes wonderful. There is something almost charming about that history, if you allow yourself to see it that way. Now, among the food and drink facts about Bangkok, there is one that the international visitor might find the most surprising of all, because it concerns not a dish from a street cart or a secret temple recipe or an ancient culinary tradition, but something that millions of people around the world consume every single day without any awareness of its origins. Red Bull, the energy drink, the one in the silver and blue can, sold in airports and convenience stores and gas stations on every continent, consumed in quantities measured in billions of cans per year worldwide, was invented in Bangkok. Its original Thai name was Krating Dang, which translates as red gaur, the gaur being a large wild bovine native to Southeast Asia. Krating Dang was formulated in Bangkok in 1976 by a Thai businessman named Chaleo Yuvidhia, drawing on existing traditions of energy tonics that were already popular in Thailand among truck drivers and laborers who needed to stay awake and alert through long shifts of physical work. The original Thai version was sweeter and more syrupy than the international version we know today, and it came in a small glass bottle rather than a can. It was an Austrian entrepreneur named Dietrich Mateschitz who, encountering Krating Dang on a business trip to Thailand in the 1980s and finding that it cured his jet lag, recognized the global potential of the formula. He partnered with Chaleo Yuvidhia, adapted the recipe slightly for Western tastes, redesigned the packaging, renamed it Red Bull, and launched it onto the international market in 1987. The rest, as the saying goes, is history. Red Bull became one of the most successful beverage brands in the world, and a global empire was built on what had begun as a small bottle of energy tonic sold to truck drivers in Bangkok. Chaleo Yuvidhia, the Bangkok pharmacist who formulated the original drink, became one of the wealthiest people in the world before his death in 2012. His family continues to hold a significant stake in the Red Bull company. The next time you see that familiar silver can, in an airport, in a convenience store, in the hand of someone who needs to stay awake through a long night, somewhere inside it, there is a small, direct thread connecting that moment to a street in Bangkok and to the particular genius of a man who understood what tired people needed. Let us stay for a moment with the sensory side of Bangkok street food culture, because there are flavors and textures and experiences available on these streets that you will not find in most other places in the world, and some of them are worth describing slowly and in detail for the sheer pleasure of the description. In the more touristy areas of Bangkok, along Khao San Road, around the night markets, near the big temples, there are vendors who sell something that stops most first-time visitors in their tracks. Not because it smells extraordinary, or because it looks particularly appealing, but because of what it actually is. Fried insects, scorpions, threaded on skewers, deep fried until crisp, their shells turned golden by the hot oil. Grasshoppers in large wire trays, seasoned with salt and sometimes with chili, their legs and wings still intact, a glistening heap of them waiting to be scooped into a small paper bag. Silkworm pupae, plump and pale, with a texture that is apparently somewhere between crunchy on the outside and soft within. Beetles, crickets, various larvae at various stages of development. The vendors of fried insects are often positioned quite deliberately in high-traffic tourist areas, because they understand that there is a market for the experience of trying something genuinely unfamiliar, something that requires a small, deliberate act of courage, a setting aside of the deeply ingrained cultural assumptions about what is and is not appropriate to eat. And many visitors do try them. Some find, to their surprise, that the experience is far more pleasant than they anticipated, that a fried grasshopper, properly seasoned, tastes something like a very light, slightly nutty, very crispy snack that is not entirely unlike a chip in its most basic sensory profile. Insects have been eaten in Thailand and throughout Southeast Asia for centuries, not as a novelty or a dare, but as a genuine food source, rich in protein, relatively easy to farm or forage, and entirely normal within the culinary traditions of the region. The novelty is entirely in the eye of the visitor. For many Thai people, particularly those from rural areas, insects are simply food. Unremarkable, familiar, eaten without any particular ceremony or awareness that someone from another culture might find the practice startling. The world, as it turns out, is full of things that are only strange until they are familiar. And then there is the durian, If the fried insects represent the gentle end of Bangkok's culinary challenges for the uninitiated visitor, the durian represents something altogether more formidable. The durian is a large, spiky tropical fruit that grows on trees throughout Southeast Asia, and it is called, without irony or exaggeration, the king of fruits, not by outsiders looking to market it as an exotic novelty, but by the people of the region who have eaten it and loved it for as long as anyone can remember, who consider its rich, complex, intensely flavored flesh to be one of the true pleasures that the natural world has to offer. The flesh of the durian is creamy and custardy, deeply sweet, with a flavor that has been compared to various things: vanilla, caramel, almond, onion, tropical fruit in concentrated form, and which ultimately resists comparison with anything else, because it is entirely itself. Those who love it describe it in terms of superlatives. Those who dislike it also reach for superlatives, but of a rather different kind. The reason for the controversy, the reason for the bans, the reason that durian is one of the few fruits in the world to have generated a substantial body of strongly held opinion, is the smell. The durian smells, to many people, deeply and overwhelmingly unpleasant. Not merely strong, but actively offensive. A complex, persistent, penetrating odor that has been described variously as rotting onions, gym socks left in a warm room, natural gas and turpentine, and which, once it enters an enclosed space, tends to remain there with a stubbornness that no amount of ventilation entirely resolves. This is why the Bangkok mass transit system, the city's metro, bans durian from its carriages. This is why many hotels throughout Bangkok and the wider region have notices on their doors politely but firmly informing guests that durian may not be brought into the building. Not because of any danger to health or any threat to safety, but simply because the smell is powerful enough to affect everyone in the vicinity, whether they want to be affected or not. And yet the durian is the king of fruits, beloved, revered, eaten with enormous pleasure by millions of people who find its flavor extraordinary, and its smell merely the somewhat inconvenient price of admission to one of the great sensory experiences of the tropical world. Let us drift now to something gentler, something cool and sweet and deeply comforting on a hot afternoon in the tropics. Thai iced tea. You will recognize it immediately if you have ever seen it. It is served in a tall glass, often plastic, packed with ice, and it is a color that is immediately distinctive. A deep, vivid, slightly unnatural shade of orange. Not the pale gold of regular iced tea. Not even the amber of a strong brew. A bright, warm, rich orange that glows against the ice like a small domestic sunrise in a cup. The base of Thai iced tea is a strongly brewed black tea, often made from a specific blend called cha yen that is widely available throughout Thailand. To this tea are added sweetened condensed milk and sometimes evaporated milk as well, giving it a richness and a sweetness that is deeply satisfying. A sweetness that feels earned by the heat, a reward that the climate has made appropriate in a way that it might not be in a cooler place. And then the ice, an enormous quantity of it, packed into the glass so that the tea must be poured over it, chilling rapidly, the orange color intensifying as the condensed milk swirls through the cold liquid in pale ribbons before eventually mixing in. The orange color comes from the particular tea blend used, which typically includes spices and sometimes food coloring, star anise, tamarind, and other ingredients depending on the specific recipe. The result is something that looks as good as it tastes, visually arresting, immediately recognizable, and possessed of a flavor that manages to be simultaneously refreshing and indulgent, cool and rich, the kind of drink that hits every note you could want from a beverage on a hot afternoon. Thai iced tea is sold everywhere in Bangkok, from the most basic street cart to the most polished cafe. It is one of those rare things that somehow tastes equally good in every context, as satisfying from a plastic bag on a street corner as from a tall glass in a comfortable restaurant. It is one of the tastes that, for anyone who has spent time in Bangkok, tends to linger in the memory long after everything else has faded. A single sip enough, years later, to bring the whole city rushing back. There is a fact about Bangkok that sounds, at first, like a quirky piece of trivia. A small, amusing detail about consumer culture in a large Asian city. But the more you think about it, the more it reveals about the particular texture of daily life in Bangkok and about how a city of 11 million people has organized itself around the need for food and drink and basic supplies at all hours of the day and night. Bangkok has one of the highest densities of 7-Eleven stores in the world. Not just a lot of them, an extraordinary number of them, spread through the city with a frequency that means you are rarely more than a few minutes walk from one, in any neighborhood at any time. They are open 24 hours. They sell an impressive range of food and drink and household necessities. And they have become, over the years, a genuinely important part of the infrastructure of daily life in the city. Not a novelty, not a convenience that supplements more traditional forms of shopping, but a fundamental fixture of how Bangkok works. For many Bangkok residents, particularly those living in the denser urban neighborhoods, the local 7-Eleven functions as a kind of pantry extension. A place to pick up the ready-made rice dish for a quick lunch, the cold coffee drink for the morning commute, the bottle of water for the walk home in the heat. It is open when everything else is closed. It is reliable when nothing else is reliable. It is cool and bright and exactly the same as every other 7-Eleven in the city, which in a city that can sometimes feel overwhelming in its complexity and its variety, is not entirely without its comforts. The presence of all those 7-Eleven speaks to something real about Bangkok's relationship with food and convenience, about a city that is always moving, always hungry, always in need of something available right now at this corner in this moment. A city that does not stop eating just because it is 2 o'clock in the morning. The heat of Bangkok, the deep, enveloping, subtropical heat that sits over the city for most of the year, broken only partially by the rains of the monsoon season, shapes food culture in ways both obvious and subtle. One of the most immediately visible of these is a custom that might seem counterintuitive to visitors from cooler climates. In Bangkok, it is entirely common, entirely normal, entirely unremarkable to drink your beer with ice. Not cold beer from a cold bottle. Beer poured over ice cubes in a glass like a soft drink, the ice diluting it gradually as it melts, keeping the whole thing significantly colder than even a refrigerated bottle would manage to stay in the ambient temperature of a Bangkok evening. Large glass mugs, packed with ice, a bottle of chong or singa poured over the top, the condensation forming immediately on the outside of the glass. To a visitor from a culture with strong opinions about how beer should and should not be served, this can seem strange at first, even slightly troubling. But the logic of it is immediately apparent once you have spent a few hours in Bangkok's heat. A warm beer in this climate is unpleasant in a way that a warm beer in a cooler climate is not. The cold matters here not as a preference but as a genuine physical necessity. And if ice is what keeps the drink cold long enough to be enjoyed, then ice is what goes in the drink. It is a small example of something that runs through Bangkok's food culture broadly, the way that the physical environment, the climate, the particular conditions of life in this place have shaped the way people eat and drink in ways that are entirely rational, entirely sensible, and entirely specific to here. There is another way that Bangkok serves its drinks that is worth pausing over, not because it is complicated or because it requires particular explanation, but simply because it is, in its own way, so perfectly suited to its context that it has persisted across generations and is likely to continue long after everything else about the city has changed beyond recognition. Many street drinks in Bangkok are still served in a plastic bag. A clear plastic bag, sealed at the top with a rubber band, with a straw poked through the seal. Your Thai iced tea, your fresh squeezed orange juice, your cold green tea, or your coconut water, handed to you in a small, transparent plastic package that you carry by the straw, or hook over a finger or tuck into your bag and drink as you walk. It is a system born of pure practical genius. The vendor does not need to provide a glass or a cup that must be returned. The customer does not need to find a place to sit to use a proper vessel. The whole transaction is as streamlined and portable as it is possible for a cold drink to be. The bag keeps the drink cold because the ice is packed tightly around the liquid and the plastic conducts the cold to the outside, which your hand then feels as you carry it. A small, pleasant sensation on a hot day that is, in its own modest way, one of the pleasures of a Bangkok street. You carry your drink in its small plastic universe, drinking through the straw as you walk, the ice slowly melting, the drink gradually warming, the bag gradually deflating as the liquid inside diminishes, and when you are finished, you are finished. The whole thing is compact and complete and disposable. It is the street food philosophy applied to beverages. It is Bangkok being absolutely itself. No consideration of Bangkok's food culture would be complete without spending time with som tum, the papaya salad that is one of the most popular and most beloved dishes in all of Thai cuisine. Som tum is made from green, unripe papaya, the papaya shredded into long, thin strands and then pounded in a large mortar with a pestle, together with a combination of ingredients that varies by region and by the preferences of the cook, but typically includes garlic, chili, lime juice, fish sauce, palm sugar, cherry tomatoes, dried shrimp, and often green beans. The pounding is not merely a technique for combining ingredients. It is a form of cooking in itself, the force of the pestle bruising and softening the papaya, releasing its juice, allowing it to absorb the flavors of everything around it, creating a final dish that is simultaneously crunchy and tender, intensely flavored, and possessed of a complexity that is quite remarkable given the simplicity of its ingredients. And then there is the heat. Thai spicy is its own category of heat, distinct from the heat of Mexican food or Indian food or any other chili-heavy cuisine. It is a direct, immediate, full frontal heat that lands on the palate with very little preamble and builds from there with a determination that can be genuinely startling if you are not prepared for it. The chilies used in Thai cooking, particularly the small ones, the bird's eye chilies that are scattered into dishes with an apparent casualness that belies their extraordinary potency, are among the most powerful available anywhere in the world. And som tum, when made for a Thai palate rather than adjusted for a foreign one, is frequently ferociously spicy. The kind of spicy that makes your eyes water and your nose run and your whole face flush with sudden heat. The kind of spicy that you feel in your entire body, not just your mouth. And yet, somehow the balance of the dish, the way the lime and the fish sauce and the palm sugar and the chili all push and pull against each other, the way the cold crunch of the papaya offers relief even as the heat builds, makes it, for those who can handle it, one of the most satisfying and addictive flavor experiences in Thai food. Be warned, and be curious, but mostly be warned. And after all that heat, there is the mango sticky rice. If som tum represents the fire of Thai food, the side of the cuisine that challenges and pushes and demands something from you, then mango sticky rice represents its sweetness, its generosity, its capacity to comfort and satisfy in the most uncomplicated and complete way. Mango sticky rice is, in its essentials, simple. Glutinous rice, cooked until soft and slightly chewy, soaked in coconut milk sweetened with palm sugar and seasoned with a little salt. Because the salt is important, because it is the salt that brings out the sweetness of the coconut and the rice in a way that sweetness alone cannot achieve. The rice is placed on a plate and beside it, the mango, ripe, fragrant, golden yellow or deep orange, sliced into long pieces that are slightly cool from however they have been stored. A little more coconut milk is drizzled over the rice. Sometimes toasted sesame seeds or crispy fried mung beans are scattered over the top for texture. And that is essentially it. Rice and fruit and coconut milk. Three things, combined with care and with the very best ingredients, into something that is considerably greater than the sum of its parts. The best time to eat mango sticky rice in Bangkok is between April and June, when the mango season is at its peak and the fruit is at its sweetest and its most fragrant. Thai mangoes at their seasonal best are something quite specific and quite wonderful. Their flesh almost melting, their sweetness deep and complex, their fragrance filling the air around them. Paired with the warm coconut rice, they create a combination that is, by almost universal agreement, one of the great simple pleasures of the tropical world. If you find yourself in Bangkok between April and June, eat mango sticky rice. Eat it more than once. Eat it at a street stall in the evening light, seated on a plastic stool. The sounds of the city all around you, the warmth of the rice against the coolness of the mango, the sweetness of the coconut against the clean brightness of the fruit. It will stay with you for a long time. But let us go back to the beginning of the day because Bangkok begins its food life very early. Long before most visitors have thought about breakfast, the city is already feeding itself. Mu ping, grilled pork skewers, the classic Bangkok breakfast on the go. Small pieces of pork, usually a cut with some fat running through it, because the fat is part of what makes them good, marinated overnight in a mixture of garlic, pepper, fish sauce, palm sugar, and coconut milk, then threaded onto bamboo skewers and grilled over charcoal. The charcoal is important. The smoke that rises from the grill and permeates the meat as it cooks. The slight char that forms on the edges of the pieces where the heat is most intense. The caramelization of the sugars in the marinade. These are the things that make a Mu Ping vendor's grill in the early morning one of the best smells available to a human being at that particular hour of the day. They are sold from carts, beside the road, near the entrances of markets and office buildings and transit stations. The vendor has been there since before dawn. The charcoal has been lit, the skewers have been prepared, the first batches have been grilled, and by the time the morning commute is underway, there is already a queue. Office workers in neat clothes, laborers in workwear, motorcycle taxi drivers in orange vests, students with heavy backpacks, all pausing for a moment at the same cart, exchanging a handful of coins for 2 or 3 skewers and perhaps a small bag of sticky rice, and then moving on into their day. The mu ping is eaten standing up, or walking, or perched on the back of a motorcycle. It requires no plate, no utensils, no particular ceremony. It is simply good food, available at the right moment, in the right quantity, at the right price. Bangkok breakfast distilled to its most essential form. Not all of Bangkok's food is sold on land. Some of it arrives by water. The floating markets are among the most photographed and most celebrated features of Thai food culture. And while many of the most famous ones are located outside the city, Bangkok has its own, closer to home. Tailing Chan Floating Market sits within the city limits, along one of the surviving klongs on the western side of Bangkok, and it offers something that the land-based street markets, for all their magnificence, cannot quite replicate. Tailing Chan, the vendors are in boats. Long wooden boats, painted and piled with goods, navigating the canal with the practiced ease of people who have spent their lives on water. There are boats selling fresh fruit, whole coconuts, clusters of banana, the deep purple of mangosteen, the spiky armor of rambutan. Boats selling cooked food, grilled river prawns, tom yum soup, pad see ew noodles. Boats selling freshly caught fish, displayed on beds of ice that catch the light from the water below and the sky above. Customers stand on the wooden dock or sit at the waterside tables, and the boats come to them, pulling up alongside, calling out their offerings, negotiating the minor logistics of a transaction conducted across the gap between dock and vessel with the friendly, unhurried efficiency of a system that has been working this way for generations. You choose what you want. Money changes hands. Food is passed across the water. It is an experience that connects very directly to the older Bangkok, the water city, the Venice of the East, the place where the klongs were roads and the boats were shops. Tailing Chan is not a museum piece. It is not a recreation or a simulation. It is a living, functioning market that has simply continued to do what it has always done. Surrounded now by a much larger and much more modern city, but unchanged in its essential nature. A thread of continuity running through the fabric of Bangkok's long history. A brief word on tipping, because it is a small thing, but it says something interesting about the way the culture of Bangkok is evolving in response to the enormous number of visitors who now pass through the city each year. Tipping has not, traditionally, been a deeply embedded custom in Thai culture. The instinct to round up a bill or to leave a little extra for a server is not historically automatic here in the way it is in, say, the United States. In traditional Thai culture, a fair exchange is a fair exchange. You pay what the food or service costs, and that is complete in itself. The suggestion that additional payment is expected or required can, in some contexts, carry an implication that the original price was insufficient, which is not quite the intended message. But Bangkok is a city that receives an extraordinary number of international visitors, and those visitors come with their own deeply ingrained tipping customs. And so the city has adjusted, as it has always adjusted to the realities of the world it exists within. In the tourist areas, in the restaurants that cater significantly to international visitors, in the hotels and the spas and the guided tour operations, tipping has become common and is appreciated. It is becoming gradually part of the expected fabric of certain transactions. The underlying Thai instinct toward graciousness and generosity means that this shift has happened without resentment on either side. What was once not customary has become, in the right contexts, warmly received. It is a small example of the larger truth about Bangkok, a city that has always known how to absorb the world without losing itself. And so we have moved through the feast tonight. through the street food capital of the world and the Michelin-starred vendors who represent its highest expression, through JFAI at her charcoal fires, goggles on, wok in hand, producing something close to perfection on a Bangkok street, through the government-invented national dish that became genuinely beloved, through the origins of Red Bull in a small bottle of energy tonic sold to truck drivers in this city, through the fried scorpions and the king of fruits and the cold orange sweetness of Thai iced tea, through the extraordinary density of convenience stores in a city that is always hungry, always moving, always in need of something available right now, through the beer served over ice because the heat demands it, and the drinks handed over in plastic bags with straws because the street demands simplicity and portability, through the fierce, intoxicating heat of som tum papaya salad and the gentle, golden sweetness of mango sticky rice, through the early morning smoke of a mu ping cart and the waterborne commerce of the floating market. All of it, the heat and the sweetness, the crisp and the yielding, the ancient and the invented, the simple and the extraordinary. All of it adds up to a food culture that is alive in every sense of that word. Alive with flavor and with history and with the particular genius of people who have, across centuries and through all of the changes that those centuries have brought, found ways to feed each other beautifully. The night market is quieting now. The charcoal fires are being banked for the morning. The last plastic bag of Thai iced tea has been finished. The ice melted, the sweetness gone. The river carries the sounds of the city downstream in the darkness. And you are full, and you are warm, and you are very nearly asleep. Let the flavors fade. Let the sounds of the market grow distant and soft. Let Bangkok feed you one last thing tonight. The deep, unhurried quiet of a city breathing in the small hours, resting between one extraordinary day and the next. You are safe. You are still. The night is all around you, warm and dark and gentle. Sleep now. Segment 4, Shopping and Markets. There is something about a market that speaks to something very old in us. Not a store, not a mall, not an online catalog with its clean photographs and its frictionless checkout process. A market, a real market, the kind where the goods are piled and hung and spread out on every available surface, where the sellers and the buyers exist in the same physical space and negotiate directly with each other, where the smells of 100 different things mingle in the warm air, where you can touch what you might buy and hold it up to the light and turn it over in your hands and feel the weight of it before you decide, where the unexpected is always one more step further in, one more turn of a corner, one more narrow aisle between stalls piled high with things you did not know you wanted until this exact moment. The market is one of the oldest human institutions in the world. Older than cities, in a sense, because cities, at least partly, grew up around markets. Around the places where people gathered to exchange things. To trade what they had for what they needed or what they wanted, or what they simply could not resist. That fundamental human impulse, to gather, to display, to negotiate, to acquire, is as alive today as it was 10,000 years ago. And nowhere in the world is it more alive, more vibrant, more fully and joyfully expressed than in Bangkok. Bangkok is a city of markets. Markets in every form, at every scale, serving every purpose, operating at every hour of the day and night. From the vast and the overwhelming to the small and the intimate. From the ancient to the brand new. From the purely practical to the wildly indulgent. The city has always understood that commerce is not merely an economic activity. It is a social one, a cultural one, a deeply human one, and it has organized its commercial life accordingly, not in sterile, temperature-controlled transactions, but in the messy, sensory, deeply pleasurable form of the market. Tonight, we are going to drift through those markets, through the largest and the oldest and the most fragrant and the most glamorous and the most unexpected. We are going to wander the stalls and the canals and the flower-strewn corridors of Bangkok's extraordinary trading life, with no particular urgency and no shopping list, simply present to whatever reveals itself as we go. Settle a little deeper. There is nowhere to be. The markets of Bangkok are open and they are waiting and they have all the time in the world. On weekends, in the northern part of Bangkok, Something happens that must be experienced rather than merely described in order to be fully believed. And yet we will attempt the description, because even an incomplete picture of Chatuchak Weekend Market is worth spending time with. Chatuchak is one of the largest markets in the world. Not one of the large markets of Bangkok. One of the largest markets anywhere on the planet. It covers an area of approximately 35 acres, and within that area it contains more than 15,000 individual stalls, arranged in a dense, labyrinthine grid of sections and subsections, alleys and covered corridors and open courtyards. All of it spread beneath a combination of permanent roofing and canvas canopies and the open sky, all of it packed on a busy weekend with somewhere between 200,000 and 300,000 visitors. 15,000 stalls. Spend 1 minute at each stall, and you would need to be at Chatuchak every weekend for almost 6 months to see them all. The scale is one thing. The variety is another. Chatuchak is not a market that specializes. It does not confine itself to a single category of goods or a single kind of experience. It sells everything. Literally very nearly everything. Antique furniture and new furniture. Vintage clothing and contemporary fashion. Buddhist amulets and secular art. Potted plants and cut flowers. Handmade ceramics and mass-produced household goods. Books and music and film. Puppets and toys and children's clothing. Food. An enormous, extraordinary variety of food, sold from stalls and carts distributed throughout the market, because feeding 15,000 stallholders and 200,000 visitors is itself a significant commercial undertaking. Animals, controversially, in a dedicated section. Hand-woven textiles from every region of Thailand. Silverwork and woodwork and jewelry of every kind. Paintings, sculptures, things you cannot name but feel compelled to pick up and examine. And then there are the things you did not come looking for, because you did not know they existed. The hand-painted silk scarves in colors you have never seen combined before. The small lacquerware box that is exactly the right size and shape for something you have not yet identified. The carved wooden elephant that catches the light in an unexpected way. The vintage poster from a Thai film made 50 years ago whose image speaks to something in you that you cannot quite articulate. This is the particular magic of Chatuchak. It is not the kind of shopping that you plan. It is the kind that happens to you. The kind that requires you to surrender the agenda and simply wander, following your curiosity from stall to stall through the maze, allowing the market to show you what it has rather than demanding what you already know you want. The heat inside Chatuchak on a busy weekend is formidable. The crowds press close and the alleys narrow and the shade is partial at best. You will sweat. You will lose your sense of direction. You will almost certainly become separated from anyone you came with at least once. You will need to stop more than once for a cold drink from one of the vendors who have very wisely set up their operations at regular intervals throughout the market with exactly this eventuality in mind. And you will not, almost certainly, regret a moment of it. Now, from the ancient and sprawling and wonderfully chaotic to something entirely different. From the market as it has existed in its essential form for centuries to the market as reimagined by contemporary luxury and modern architecture, and a very particular vision of what shopping in the 21st century might aspire to be. Icon Siam. Icon Siam is a shopping mall that opened on the banks of the Chao Phraya River in 2018, and it is an extraordinary piece of work by almost any measure. It is massive, one of the largest malls in Southeast Asia, with a retail space that stretches across almost 500,000 square meters of floor area. Its architecture is dramatic and deliberate, designed to make a statement about Bangkok's position as a world city, as a place that can hold its own in the company of the great commercial and cultural centers of the globe. But the most remarkable thing about Icon Siam is not its size, or its luxury brands, or the extraordinary care that has been taken with every detail of its design. It is what sits inside it. Within Icon Siam, there is a floating market, a real, functioning, water-surrounded market, boats and all, housed entirely within the climate-controlled interior of the mall. The market is called Suksium, and it occupies a large section of the lower floors of the building, where a network of canals and water features supports a collection of traditional Thai regional stalls and vendors, some of them in actual boats on actual water, selling food and crafts and goods from every region of Thailand. An indoor floating market, the ancient form of Thai commerce, the klong, the wooden boat, the vendor calling out to customers on the bank, preserved and celebrated within the walls of a 21st century luxury retail destination. Bangkok taking its own history seriously enough to carry it forward into every context, refusing to relegate the past to a museum or a designated heritage zone, but insisting on its continued presence even in the most contemporary and most expensive surroundings. There is something wonderful about that insistence, something that speaks to a deeply confident cultural identity, the confidence to say, we do not need to choose between our past and our present. We can have both. We can put a floating market inside a luxury mall, and neither thing will be diminished by the presence of the other. Both will, in fact, be enriched. A short distance from Icon Siam, in the heart of Bangkok's central shopping district, there is a mall that has achieved something that most commercial spaces can only dream of. It has become genuinely internationally famous. Not famous in the way that a mall might be famous among shoppers, or famous among architects, or famous in the trade publications that track the retail industry. Famous in the way that a sunset is famous. Famous because people look at it and feel compelled to record the experience and share it. Siam Paragon has, at various points, been listed among the most Instagrammed locations in the world. The atrium is part of the reason. The soaring, light-filled interior, the architectural drama of the spaces, the particular way that the building organizes itself around a central void that draws the eye upward through multiple levels to the sky above. All of this creates a visual experience that is genuinely striking, genuinely worth documenting. The mix of luxury brands arranged throughout its floors has something to do with it too. Siam Paragon has always positioned itself at the highest end of Bangkok's retail market. And the aspirational quality of that positioning has its own photogenic power. But perhaps most of all, Siam Paragon is Instagrammed because of where it sits. At the geographic and emotional center of Bangkok's consumer culture. At the meeting point of the BTS Skytran lines that connect the modern city. Surrounded by the other great malls of the Siam District, Siam Center and Siam Discovery, just across the plaza. MBK a short walk further along. Siam Paragon is a destination in itself, but it is also a hub, a place people pass through on their way to somewhere else and pause in and look up at and feel for a moment the particular pleasure of being in a place that is beautiful and busy and full of possibility. Bangkok has always understood the pleasure of beautiful spaces. Its temples are beautiful. Its palaces are beautiful. Its river, at the right moment, is beautiful. And its shopping malls, at least some of them, at least the best of them, are beautiful too. Because beauty in Bangkok is not reserved for the sacred. It is expected everywhere. Not far from Siam Paragon, the MBK Center represents a very different philosophy of retail, and is, in its own way, just as remarkable. Where Siam Paragon gleams with luxury and aspiration, MBK is cheerful and dense and wonderfully practical. It is famous, above all, for one thing: electronics. Mobile phones and the repair and modification thereof. Accessories and components and cases and chargers and screen protectors in every possible variety. The gadgets and the gear and the technical equipment of modern connected life. Available here in quantities and at price points that attract both Bangkok residents looking for a good deal and visitors from around the world who know the mall's reputation and have come specifically to take advantage of it. The mobile phone stalls of MBK are a particular attraction. Row upon row of vendors, each one with their own specialty or their own angle. New phones, refurbished phones, imported phones, phones with warranties, phones without. Accessories covering every surface. The soft electronic glow of 100 screens. And the vendors, friendly, knowledgeable, accustomed to dealing with customers from every country and every language background. Skilled at the gentle negotiation that is part of the transaction here in a way that it is not when you buy a phone from a brand flagship store. MBK also offers something that has become increasingly valuable in the era of thin, fragile, expensive personal technology. It offers repair. Cracked screen, failed battery, water damage, software problems. In MBK, somewhere in that dense grid of stalls and workshops, there is almost certainly someone who can fix what is broken quickly and at a reasonable price while you wait. The repair culture that MBK embodies, the understanding that a thing that is broken is not necessarily a thing that must be replaced, that skilled hands can restore function and extend life, is one of the more quietly admirable aspects of Bangkok's commercial culture. And then there is Pantip Plaza. If MBK is the practical, accessible, everyday face of Bangkok's electronics market, Pantip Plaza has historically occupied a rather more complex position in the city's commercial ecosystem. For many years, particularly through the 1990s and 2000s, when the digital revolution was in full swing and the appetite for software and hardware of every description was enormous and the legal frameworks governing intellectual property were, shall we say, somewhat loosely observed, Pantip Plaza was known as the Wild West of the Bangkok technology world. Software that would cost hundreds of dollars through official retail channels could be found at Pantip for a fraction of the price. Hardware of every description, from every source of every provenance, was available somewhere in the building. The rules that governed commerce in the more formal retail environments of the city seemed to apply here with considerably less force. Pantip was a place where the determined buyer could find almost anything, if they knew where to look and were willing to ask. Successive crackdowns and the transformation of the digital economy, the move toward streaming services and cloud software and the subscription models that have replaced much of the physical and pirated software market, have changed Pantip significantly over the years. It is a more conventional electronics market today than it was in its most notorious period. But its reputation lingers, and with it a certain atmosphere, a sense that Pantip has always operated at the frontier of things, at the place where commerce and technology and the rules governing both are still being negotiated, still being worked out, still in flux. There is a kind of energy in places like that, a sense of possibility, of things not yet fully determined, of a game still in play. Now let us leave the world of screens and hardware and bright commercial interiors and step into something entirely different. Something older and more sensory and more immediately, physically beautiful than any mall or electronics market could ever be. Let us step into Pak Klong Tullet, the flower market. The flower market of Bangkok operates 24 hours a day, which means that at any moment, in the blazing heat of midday, in the cool of a rainy afternoon, in the deep quiet of 3 in the morning, there is a place in this city where flowers are being sold, where the air is saturated with fragrance, the rich sweetness of roses and jasmine and marigolds, the lighter, cooler scent of orchids, the green freshness of cut stems and water, and where the visual experience of so many colors assembled in one place creates something that approaches, in its own way, the effect of a work of art. The market sits along the canal near the Memorial Bridge, and it has been there in one form or another for over a century. The flowers arrive, many of them, in the small hours of the morning, trucked in from the growing regions of northern Thailand, unloaded from boats on the canal, arranged in the stalls in the darkness before dawn by the vendors who have been doing this work for years and decades and sometimes generations. By the time the rest of Bangkok is waking up, Pak Klong Tullet is already in full operation. The marigolds deserve particular attention. In Thailand, the marigold is the flower of devotion, the flower offered at temples and spirit houses and sacred images, the flower used to make the garlands called Phuang Malai that are one of the most recognizable symbols of Thai religious and social life. At Pak Klong Tullet, marigolds arrive in quantities that are almost difficult to imagine. Great heaps and mounds and towers of them, their deep orange and yellow color unmistakable, their fragrance filling the air. In the early morning, when the light is just beginning to come up and the marigolds are piled high and glowing with their own internal warmth against the pre-dawn darkness, the flower market is one of the most quietly beautiful places in all of Bangkok. But the orchids are there too. Thailand is one of the world's great orchid producers, and the orchids of Pak Klong Tullet arrive in an extraordinary variety. Dendrobiums in shades of purple and pink and white, cymbidiums in pale cream and deep burgundy, sprays of small flowered varieties that look like something from a botanical illustration. They are sold by the stem, by the bundle, by the box. They are destined for hotel lobbies and restaurant tables and wedding decorations and temple offerings and the private homes of Bangkok residents who have grown up with fresh flowers as a normal, everyday feature of domestic life. A city that maintains a 24-hour flower market is a city that takes beauty seriously. Not beauty as a luxury or a special occasion, but beauty as a daily necessity, as something that belongs in every space, at every hour, without apology or interruption. From flowers to gold, from one of the most delicate things in the world to one of the most enduring. Yaowarat, Chinatown. Bangkok's Chinatown is not a tourist recreation or a themed district designed to evoke the idea of Chinese culture for the benefit of visitors. It is one of the largest and most genuine Chinatowns in the world. A living, working neighborhood that has been the home and the commercial hub of Bangkok's Chinese community for more than 2 centuries, since the city's earliest days when Chinese merchants were among the first and most important trading partners of the new capital. To walk along Yaowarat Road at almost any hour is to experience a density of life and commerce and history and food and energy that is, even by Bangkok's very considerable standards, remarkable. The street is narrow by the standards of a modern city, lined on both sides with shophouses that have been there for generations, their facades slightly worn, their ground floors open to the street and packed with merchandise, their upper floors where families live or have lived for as long as anyone can remember. The signs are in Chinese characters as well as Thai. The sounds of Teochew Chinese can be heard mingled with the Thai of the broader city. The smells are of food being prepared and incense burning and the faintly metallic edge that comes from being near a great deal of worked metal. And gold. Yaowarat is the hub of Thailand's gold trade. The gold shops of Yaowarat are immediately recognizable, their interiors gleaming with yellow light, their glass cases displaying necklaces and bracelets and rings and earrings and decorative objects of 23-karat Thai gold in the particular warm, deep yellow that is specific to this purity and this tradition. The gold shops are often family businesses, operated by the same families for generations, the knowledge of the trade passing from parent to child in the same way that a recipe or a craft might be passed on, through daily proximity and observation and gradual hands-on learning. Gold in Thai culture is not merely decorative. It is a form of savings, a form of security, a tangible, portable, universally valued store of wealth that can be bought when times are good and sold when times require it, that does not depend on the stability of banks or the reliability of institutions, that simply is what it is, a certain weight of pure metal with a certain value, clear and unambiguous and unchanging. In a country with a complex economic history, the wisdom of holding some of one's wealth in gold has been demonstrated often enough that it is deeply ingrained in the financial culture. And Yaowarat is where that culture is most fully, most visibly expressed. The gold shops of Yaowarat buy and sell all day long, their scales precise, their prices displayed prominently on boards that are updated in real time to reflect the current market price. People come in carrying old jewelry or inherited pieces, and leave with cash. Others come in with cash and leave wearing something new, gleaming and warm and solid against their skin. The transactions are unhurried and serious and conducted with the particular gravity that attaches to dealings in something genuinely valuable. Throughout all of Bangkok's markets, not in the malls, not in the convenience stores, but in the markets, the street stalls, the klongside vendors, the weekend fairs, and the overnight bazaars, there operates an ancient and rather beautiful social ritual. The bargain. Bargaining is not, in Bangkok's market culture, a conflict. It is not an adversarial process in which one party tries to extract the maximum and the other tries to surrender the minimum, both of them moving toward a grudging compromise with mutual suspicion. It is, at its best, a kind of conversation, a form of human exchange that goes beyond the merely transactional, that acknowledges the humanity of both parties and gives both of them a role to play, an agency to exercise, a stake in the outcome. The seller names a price. The buyer responds, perhaps with a counteroffer, perhaps with a slightly pained expression that communicates doubt without being impolite, perhaps with a gentle question about whether a better price might be available if 2 items are purchased rather than 1. The seller considers, perhaps moves a little. The buyer moves a little in return. A number is found that both parties can live with, and the transaction is completed, not with the slightly flat effect of a fixed-price purchase, but with the particular warmth that comes from having navigated something together, from having arrived at an outcome through mutual engagement rather than passive acceptance. For visitors from cultures where fixed prices are the norm and bargaining carries connotations of aggression or mistrust, this process can feel uncomfortable at first. There is a fear of offending, of asking for too much, of being rude to someone who is simply trying to make a living. But the Bangkok market vendor is not offended by a counteroffer. The counteroffer is expected. The counteroffer is the beginning of the conversation, not the end of it. What would be slightly rude in this context is to simply pay the first price quoted and walk away, not because the vendor minds receiving the full asking price, but because it forecloses the conversation before it has really begun. This does not apply everywhere. Not in the malls, not in the branded stores, not in the 7-Elevens or the pharmacies or the restaurants with printed menus. These are fixed-price environments, and treating them as though they were markets would simply be confusing and slightly embarrassing. The art is in knowing where the conversation is invited and where the price is simply the price, and behaving accordingly. And then there is a newer phenomenon in Bangkok's market landscape, one that has grown up alongside and in some ways in response to the long tradition of the traditional street market, offering something similar in its essential form but wrapped in an aesthetic that speaks to a younger, more contemporary sensibility. The train markets, Talad Rod Fai. The name comes from the origin of the first of these markets, which was established near an old railway depot, among the sheds and sidings where old trains had been left to accumulate the particular beautiful deterioration of disused machinery, the rust and the peeling paint and the organic shapes of metal slowly returning to the earth that gave it. The first Talad Rod Fai used this setting deliberately, establishing itself as a market for vintage goods in a vintage space. Old furniture and old clothing and old records and old cameras and old signs and old motorcycles and old objects of every kind, arranged in the warm light of evening among the shadows of the old trains. The aesthetic caught on. The markets multiplied. Today there are several versions of the train market concept operating in Bangkok, each with its own location and its own slightly different character, but all sharing certain things in common. The vintage goods, the hunting through racks of old clothes and shelves of old objects for the thing that speaks to you, the thing that carries in its wear and its history some trace of the life it lived before it came to rest in this market stall. The street food, because no Bangkok market is complete without it. The music, typically something from a previous decade, played from a speaker somewhere in the middle distance. The bars, which is where the train markets depart most clearly from the traditional Bangkok market model, offering cold beer and cocktails and the kind of convivial evening atmosphere that turns shopping into socializing. The train markets are popular with Bangkok's younger residents, and with the international visitors who find in them a version of Bangkok's market culture that feels both entirely authentic and entirely contemporary. They are proof that Bangkok does not merely preserve its commercial traditions as heritage. It evolves them, updates them, finds new expressions for the underlying impulse that has always driven the city's extraordinary market life. The impulse to gather, to display, to trade, to eat, to talk, to linger. And now let us hold all of it together for a moment, before the images begin to soften and blur as they always do in this quiet hour before sleep. Chatuchak in the heat of a weekend afternoon, the maze of 15,000 stalls, the press of bodies, the extraordinary variety of everything that human beings make and sell and desire, the cool, dramatic interior of Icon Siam and the boats moving on the water of its indoor floating market, the ancient commerce of the Klongs somehow transplanted into the air-conditioned 21st century. Siam Paragon gleaming in the light of a Bangkok afternoon, its atrium catching the sky above, its floors full of people for whom this space is not just a place to shop but a place to be, to see and be seen, to feel the pulse of a modern, confident, globally connected city. MBK with its rows of phones and its patient repair technicians, fixing what is broken with the quiet authority of people who understand how things work. Pantip Plaza and its complicated, fascinating history at the frontier of technology and commerce and the rules governing both. The flower market at 3 in the morning, the marigolds glowing in the darkness, the fragrance washing over everything, the beauty that this city insists on at every hour. Yaowarat and its gold, the warm yellow light of the gold shop interiors, the glass cases, the scales, the families who have been trading here for generations, the weight of real value changing hands in a neighborhood that has been the economic heart of a community for 2 centuries. The bargain, the conversation, the gentle back and forth, the human exchange that turns commerce into something warmer and more interesting than a mere transaction. And the train markets in the evening, the vintage things and the cold beer and the old trains rusting beautifully in the background. A younger Bangkok finding its own version of the tradition that has always defined the city. Commerce in Bangkok is never just commerce. It is culture. It is community. It is the form that human connection takes when it moves through the medium of the marketplace. It is the city being most fully, most joyfully, most completely itself. Let all of that fade now, gently, as the markets close for the night and the vendors pack their goods and the last visitors drift homeward and the canals reflect the lights of the city in long, shifting lines of gold and white and deep, restful darkness. The market is quiet. The flowers are fresh for tomorrow. The gold is behind locked glass. The old trains are resting among the weeds, and you are drifting, slowly, beautifully, towards sleep. Everything is here. Everything is safe. Everything is well. Close your eyes. The city is breathing softly around you, and the night is long and warm and full of rest. Segment 5, Transport and Getting Around. There is a particular kind of stillness that comes just after a journey. Not the stillness of a place that has never moved, never changed, never been disturbed, but the stillness of arrival, the moment when the motion stops in the body, which has been braced against it, against the turns and the vibrations and the uncertainty of the way, gradually remembers how to be at rest. The stillness that feels earned, that carries within it the whole texture of the journey that preceded it. The heat and the noise and the color, the brief moments of anxiety and the longer moments of simply watching the world go past from whatever vessel carried you through it. Bangkok is a city in which the journey is never merely the means to the end. It is part of the experience, part of the story. The way you move through the city, the particular vehicle you choose, the particular route you take, the particular sensory experience of that movement, shapes your encounter with Bangkok as much as any destination you might be heading toward. The getting there is as interesting as the being there, sometimes more so, and Bangkok offers more ways of getting somewhere than almost any other city in the world. Tonight, we are going to move through those ways, slowly, because there is no traffic on this particular journey. No congestion, no delays, no lane changes or near misses or the long, breathless negotiation of a motorcycle weaving between cars at speed. Just the gentle, unhurrying drift of a story moving from one mode of transport to the next, taking its time, pausing where it wants to pause, arriving wherever it arrives in its own good time. Find your most comfortable position. Let your body settle, let your breathing slow, and let Bangkok take you for a ride. Let us begin with the one that everyone pictures when they think of Bangkok streets. The one that has appeared in 1,000 photographs and 1,000 films, that has become so thoroughly associated with this city in the global imagination that it functions almost as a logo. A three-wheeled, open-sided, motorized vehicle painted in bright colors and driven with a casual confidence that suggests its operator has a relationship with the laws of physics that is perhaps somewhat more personal and negotiated than the rest of us might be comfortable with. The tuk-tuk. The name is onomatopoeic. It comes from the sound of the small two-stroke engine that powers the vehicle, a rapid, slightly uneven put that is entirely characteristic and entirely unmistakable once you have heard it. The engine sits low at the front, behind the driver's seat, and it is not a large or a powerful engine, but in the hands of an experienced driver navigating the particular opportunities that Bangkok's traffic presents, it is more than sufficient. The passenger compartment sits behind the driver, open on both sides, covered above by a canopy, just large enough for 2 or 3 passengers seated on a bench, close enough to the street that you feel every turn and every acceleration in your whole body. The city passing just centimeters from your elbow as the tuk-tuk threads through gaps that a larger vehicle would not attempt. Riding a tuk-tuk is an experience that is simultaneously exhilarating and slightly alarming in the very best way. The openness of it, the absence of windows, of the sealed, climate-controlled interior that most modern transportation provides, means that you are not merely passing through Bangkok but genuinely inside it. The heat is real. The noise is real. The smell of the street is real. The exhaust and the food stalls and the incense from a spirit house on the corner and the brief, cool breath of a canal somewhere nearby. You are not an observer behind glass. You are a participant, moving through the city on its own terms, at its own pace, in direct physical contact with its air and its sounds. There is, however, a practical note worth mentioning. For all its romance and its iconic status, the tuk-tuk is often, in straightforward financial terms, more expensive than a regular metered taxi. The price is negotiated before you climb in. There is no meter, no objective measure of the fare, just the interaction between what the driver asks and what you are willing to pay. For visitors unfamiliar with the going rates, this negotiation can result in paying significantly more than the journey would cost by other means. The tuk-tuk experience, then, is perhaps best understood not as a mode of transport in the purely practical sense, but as something you pay for in the way you pay for an experience, for the wind and the noise and the proximity of the city, for the particular thrill of moving through Bangkok at tuk-tuk height and tuk-tuk speed, for the story you will tell when you get to where you are going. But if the tuk-tuk is about the experience of motion, the motorbike taxi is about something more purely functional. Something that Bangkok's residents depend on every single day, not for the thrill of it, but for the simple, urgent, entirely practical reason that it gets you where you are going faster than almost anything else in a city where the alternative is often not moving at all. The motorbike taxi drivers of Bangkok are recognizable by a single distinguishing feature: the orange vest. A numbered, brightly colored vest worn over whatever the driver happens to be wearing. That signals their status and their availability, and, in a city of extraordinary visual density, makes them immediately findable in a crowd. They congregate at specific spots throughout the city, at the entrances to narrow alleys called sois where larger vehicles cannot go, at transit stations, at markets, at the edges of neighborhoods, waiting for passengers with the patient, watchful readiness of people who are very good at their particular job and know it. And their particular job requires a genuine skill. Navigating Bangkok's traffic on a motorcycle, threading between lanes of stationary or slow-moving cars, finding the gaps and the angles and the narrow passages that a car cannot use, reading the flow of the traffic with the same kind of environmental awareness that a river guide reads the current, is not something that can be learned quickly or performed carelessly. The best motorbike taxi drivers move through Bangkok streets with a quality of attention and a lightness of touch that is, if you can set aside the natural anxiety of being a passenger on a motorcycle in heavy urban traffic, genuinely impressive to observe. They are, as the fact states, the fastest way to beat Bangkok's traffic. Not comfortable exactly, not relaxing, certainly not the choice for anyone who has reservations about motorcycles or about the particular experience of being carried through a dense urban environment at speed with nothing between you and the city but a borrowed helmet and a prayer. But fast. Genuinely, reliably, impressively fast. In a city where traffic can turn a 10-minute drive into an hour-long ordeal, the motorbike taxi that delivers you to your destination in a fraction of the time is not a luxury. It is, for many Bangkok residents, simply how the city works. And then there are the taxis, the regular four-wheeled, metered taxis that fill Bangkok streets in enormous numbers, available at almost any hour, navigable with a phone and a few words or a written address, and air-conditioned to a degree that, after any time spent in the heat of the city, feels less like a feature and more like a fundamental human right. Bangkok's taxis are not subtle. They are not the anonymous black cabs of London or the yellow cabs of New York, single-color fleets operating under a unified visual identity. Bangkok's taxis come in a range of colors that is, in its own way, rather cheerful. Bright pink, deep orange, blue, green, yellow, red, sometimes in combinations. The pink ones are perhaps the most famous, having entered Bangkok's visual identity in a way that the more muted transport options of other cities have never quite managed. A bright pink taxi navigating the gray and brown and neon of a Bangkok street at night is a genuinely pretty thing. A small mobile exclamation of color in the visual noise of the city. The meter in a Bangkok taxi is a generally reliable and reassuring presence, setting the fare at a rate that is, by international standards, extremely reasonable. The experience of a Bangkok taxi can vary enormously depending on the driver. Some are taciturn and focused, navigating the traffic with grim efficiency. Others are extraordinarily social, curious about where you are from and what you think of their city, full of opinions and recommendations and stories. Some have decorated the interior of their cab with an elaborate personal shrine, garlands of jasmine around the rearview mirror, small golden Buddha images on the dashboard, photographs of the royal family on the visor, making the interior of the taxi feel, briefly and unexpectedly, like a mobile temple. Others have opted for elaborate audio systems, filling the cab with Thai-pop music at a volume that leaves little room for conversation or, for that matter, thought. Each taxi is, in its own small way, a self-contained universe. A few minutes of shared space with a stranger who knows the city completely, who has navigated its streets in every season and every weather and every hour of the day and night, who has opinions about its traffic and its politics and its food and its future that are entirely their own. The taxi ride is, in Bangkok, never quite just a taxi ride. But for all the color and the character of Bangkok's road transport, the tuk-tuks and the orange-vested motorcycle taxis and the pink taxis and the rivers of cars and trucks and buses that flow through the city's arterial roads. The inescapable truth is this: Bangkok's traffic is among the worst in the world. Consistently, reliably, comprehensively, Year after year, in the surveys and the indices and the studies that measure these things, Bangkok appears near the top of the lists of cities where road congestion is most severe, where the average speed of traffic in peak hours is most reduced, where the gap between how long a journey should theoretically take and how long it actually takes is most dramatic. The reasons are multiple and interconnected and largely the product of Bangkok's extraordinary growth. A city that grew very rapidly into one of the largest in Southeast Asia, with an infrastructure of roads that was designed for a much smaller population and a much more modest volume of vehicles, and which has been playing catch-up ever since. A city where car ownership increased dramatically as the economy grew, filling streets that were not designed to carry so many vehicles. A city with a geography, low-lying, threaded with waterways, organized around a river rather than a grid, that presents genuine challenges to the laying of new roads and the expansion of existing ones. The traffic of Bangkok is, for many of its residents, simply a fact of life. A background condition like the heat, something you account for, plan around, adapt to, rather than something you expect to be resolved. You leave earlier. You take the Skytran when you can. You find the back routes and the alternative paths that your particular experience of the city has revealed to you over years of navigation. You carry something to read or someone to talk to, or you learn the particular Bangkok art of simply sitting in traffic with a quality of patient, unhurrying acceptance that is, in its own way, a form of wisdom. Which is, perhaps, why Bangkok's elevated rail system, the BTS Skytran, has become one of the most beloved features of the city's infrastructure. Not simply because it is fast and clean and air-conditioned, though it is all of those things, but because of what it means to be above the traffic. To look down from the Skytran's windows at the stopped cars and the tuk-tuks and the buses below, moving through the city at a pace and with a smoothness that the street cannot offer, and feel the particular quiet satisfaction of having found a way through. The BTS Skytran runs on elevated tracks above the main arteries of Bangkok's central districts. Its stations are clean and well organized. Its trains are frequent enough that you rarely wait long. Its network covers the central commercial and residential areas of modern Bangkok with reasonable thoroughness, connecting the major shopping districts and transit hubs and tourist destinations along two main lines that cross at the Siam station in the heart of the city. To ride the BTS is to see Bangkok from a particular angle that the street does not offer. From the elevated tracks, you can look out over the rooftops of the city, an extraordinary landscape of architectural variety, from the ornate rooflines of the older neighborhoods to the gleaming glass towers of the new commercial districts, from the green canopy of the parks to the silver curves of the river in the distance. The city spreads away in every direction, vast and dense and full of itself, and you move through it at height, at speed, in the cool air of the train, watching it all go past with the particular pleasure of someone who is both inside the city and, for this brief elevated moment, slightly outside it too. Below the streets, the MRT, the Metropolitan Rapid Transit, Bangkok's underground subway system, offers something different again, where the BTS gives you the city from above. The MRT gives you the city from below. Where the Skytran is visible and open, the subway is hidden and enclosed, moving through tunnels that thread beneath the streets and the klongs and the foundations of buildings that have no idea, going about their daily business above, that trains are passing quietly beneath them. The MRT is newer than the BTS, and its network has been expanding steadily since it opened in 2004. It serves areas of the city that the Skytran does not reach, deeper into the older neighborhoods, further out into the suburban districts, connecting parts of Bangkok that had previously been dependent entirely on road transport. Its stations have the clean, slightly anonymous quality of subway stations everywhere, the long escalators descending into the cool underground air, the platforms with their platform screen doors, the recorded voice announcing the next stop in Thai and English, the slightly compressed time of the underground journey where the outside world ceases to exist and you exist entirely in this sealed, moving, artificially lit tube. Together, the BTS and the MRT form the backbone of Bangkok's modern public transit system, the fixed, reliable, traffic-immune infrastructure around which the rest of the city's complex, chaotic, gloriously varied transport ecosystem organizes itself. They are not perfect. They do not reach everywhere. They are crowded at peak hours in a way that tests the most committed commuter's equanimity. But they work. And in a city where the alternative is the traffic, they work wonderfully. But before the Skytran, before the subway, before the first road was paved and the first taxi painted its cheerful pink. Bangkok moved by water, and it still does. The Chao Phraya River Express boat service is not a tourist attraction. It is not a sightseeing cruise dressed up as transport. It is a legitimate, functioning, daily-use commuter service that carries Bangkok residents up and down the Chao Phraya River in long, wooden-hulled boats fitted with powerful diesel engines, stopping at piers along both banks to pick up and drop off passengers with the brisk efficiency of a bus route that happens to run on one of the world's great rivers. The river taxis are cheap, significantly cheaper than taxis or tuk-tuks, competitive with the BTS and MRT, and possessed of something that neither the road nor the rail can offer: the experience of moving through the city on the water, of sitting in an open boat with the wind coming off the river and the smell of the water and the sky above you and the whole extraordinary panorama of the Bangkok riverside moving past on both sides. The Grand Palace on one bank, Wat Arun on the other, the old commercial buildings and the new hotels and the ancient wooden houses on stilts at the water's edge that have been standing in the same spot for longer than anyone can determine. The river taxi stops at piers that are, in themselves, interesting places. The piers are often busy markets. Vendors of food and drink and small goods have set up wherever the boats stop, knowing that the regular flow of passengers represents a regular flow of potential customers. You step off the boat and immediately into a small commerce of noodles and fresh fruit and cold drinks. Then through it and up the steps to the street above, the smell of the river still on your clothes, the sound of the boat's engine already diminishing behind you as it pulls away from the pier and moves on upstream. And then there are the canal boats, specifically the boats of the Seine Seep Canal, a different kind of water transport entirely, serving a different part of the city, with a character and an atmosphere all its own. The Seine Seep Canal runs roughly east-west through the middle of Bangkok, connecting the old city near the Democracy Monument to the eastern neighborhoods and beyond. It is one of the older canals in the city, dug in the 19th century as a military and commercial waterway, and it has been carrying people across the city ever since. The boats that operate on the Seine Seep are narrow and long and very fast, propelled by powerful engines that push them through the canal at a speed that is, in the context of Bangkok's traffic, genuinely impressive. The word chaotic, used in the description of the Seine Seep boats, is not an exaggeration. These are working boats in a working canal, and the experience of riding them is several significant steps removed from the relative comfort of the Chao Phraya river taxis. The boats are packed. At peak hours, passengers stand pressed together along the narrow hull, holding on to whatever support is available, while the boat moves at speed through the canal, throwing up spray that can reach the passengers at the sides, which is why the boats carry tarps that are rolled down along the sides when the speed and the spray demand it, reducing the view but keeping the passengers drier than they would otherwise be. The canal itself is not fragrant. The Seine Seep is, to put it diplomatically, a canal that carries evidence of the city that has grown up around it over many decades. The water is dark. The smell is particular. And yet the boats work. They carry an enormous number of people across the city every single day, moving them from one part of Bangkok to another along a route that bypasses the road traffic entirely, delivering them to their destinations with a speed that the streets simply cannot match. The Seine Seep boats are one of the more vivid expressions of Bangkok's fundamental pragmatism, the willingness to use what works, to value function alongside form, to choose the solution that solves the problem even if it does not do so in the most comfortable or the most picturesque way. And finally, the gateways, the places where Bangkok meets the world. The airports. Bangkok has two of them, and together they serve one of the most traveled air corridors on the planet. The first and the larger is Suvarnabhumi Airport, which opened in 2006 and immediately established itself as one of the busiest airports in Southeast Asia, a title it has held consistently since. The name, Suvarnabhumi, is Sanskrit and means golden land, one of the ancient names for the mainland of Southeast Asia, a name that reaches back centuries into the region's history of trade and contact and cultural exchange. The airport is large and modern and well organized, handling tens of millions of passengers each year, connecting Bangkok to virtually every major city in the world. The glass and steel of Suvarnabhumi's terminal, the soaring roof, the long concourses, the gates that lead to flights departing in every direction, is a fitting emblem of a city that has always been a crossroads. Bangkok has been a place where East met West, where the ancient met the modern, where the local and the global have negotiated their relationship, for as long as the city has existed. Suvarnabhumi is simply the contemporary expression of that same function, the place where Bangkok continues to receive the world and to send its own people out into it. But the second airport is the one with the more remarkable story. Don Mueang Airport, on the northern edge of Bangkok, is one of the oldest continuously operating airports in the world. Its history as an airfield stretches back to 1914, which means that for well over a century, aircraft have been taking off from and landing on this particular piece of ground on the northern edge of Bangkok. The Royal Thai Air Force established its base here in the earliest years of aviation history, when aircraft were still made of wood and fabric and the act of flight was so new that each successful journey was a kind of miracle. Don Mueang saw Thailand's first commercial flights. It witnessed the arrival of international aviation in Southeast Asia. It was expanded and modernized through the 20th century, serving as Bangkok's primary international airport for decades before the opening of Suvarnabhumi eventually shifted that role to the newer facility. But Don Mueang did not close. It was revived as a budget carrier hub, and today it handles an enormous volume of regional and domestic traffic, bringing travelers in from across Thailand and Southeast Asia, sending them back out again, carrying on the work of connection that it has been doing from the same piece of ground for more than 100 years. There is something quietly extraordinary about that. An airport that was operating before the First World War, that has seen a century of aviation history unfold, from biplanes to jets, from the Wright brothers era to the age of widebody aircraft carrying hundreds of passengers at speeds and altitudes that would have seemed like pure fantasy to the pilots who first flew from this field. And that is still operating today. Still receiving aircraft. Still sending them out again. Still connecting this ancient, extraordinary city to the wider world that it has always been part of. And so we have traveled together tonight through the ways of moving through Bangkok. Through the three-wheeled, engine-putting, wind-in-your-hair freedom of the tuk-tuk, and the focused, orange-vested, gap-threading urgency of the motorcycle taxi. Through the cheerful colors of the pink and orange and blue taxis, the shrine-decorated dashboards, the Thai pop music at full volume, the patient drivers who have learned to live inside the traffic that consistently ranks among the worst in the world. Through the elevated grace of the BTS Skytran, looking down over the rooftops of the city, and the quiet underground efficiency of the MRT, moving through its tunnels beneath the streets. Through the river taxis on the Chao Phraya, moving past the Grand Palace and Waterun and the ancient wooden houses on stilts, cheap and genuine and possessed of a beauty that no road journey can offer. Through the chaotic, fast, dark canal urgency of the Seine seat boats, spray flying, passengers pressed together, the city crossing itself at speed. And through the two airports, the modern golden land of Suvarnabhumi and the ancient century-old Don Mueang, still flying after all these years. Every city is defined partly by how it moves, by the particular relationship between its size and its geography and its culture and the solutions it has found. Ingenious, practical, colorful, sometimes frustrating, always interesting, to the fundamental challenge of getting from here to there. Bangkok's solutions are entirely its own. They could not belong to any other city. They are the product of this river and these klongs and this heat and these millions of people and this particular combination of the ancient and the modern that defines everything about Bangkok. The traffic is standing still somewhere out there in the darkness. The Skytran is running its last service of the night. The river is moving, as it always moves, carrying its own dark water down toward the sea. The last canal boat has made its final run, and the Seine Seep lies quiet now, its surface still. And you are still. Your journey tonight has required no vehicle and no ticket. It has required only the willingness to follow, and to listen, and to let Bangkok carry you where it will. You have arrived. You are here. You are resting. Let the sounds of the city soften now, and the images blur, and the whole long, vivid, colorful, moving story of Bangkok settle into the quiet of sleep around you like warm water, like the river in the dark, like the gentle, unhurried motion of a boat with its engine off, drifting on the current, going wherever the water goes. There is nowhere left to be tonight. The journey is complete, and sleep is here, soft and close and entirely welcoming. Let go. You are safe. You are still. And the night is long and warm and full of rest.